Okay, so like as y'all, not all of y'all, but like most of y'all know on the channel, we love the idea of me covering the X-Men, right? So we've been covering almost everything the X-Men since 1986 up to like right now, the year 2000. Like, man, we covered a lot. Uncanny X-Men, X-Men, X-Force, you name it, we probably did cover it on the channel. But we're now kind of the early 2000s, right? When it came to Marvel Comics, you had some crossovers happen that involved the X-Men, but also other characters as well. See, for the 90s, for the X-Men, they're kind of on their own when it came to crossovers. All the different X-Men crossovers, except for like, Onslaught, it was really more just X-Men events, and they were over there away from the other heroes. Well, that's not the case this time because now, when it comes to maximum security, it involves really a lot of different heroes. The X-Men, Spider-Man, Iron Man, the Avengers. I want to say Thor has a tie-in as well. So for our coverage over the X-Men, what I'm going to do right now is completely cover maximum security. Now, while doing that, we're also going to go ahead and still like continue our coverage over the X-Men. So like X-Force, Generation X, Gambit. We also have like, what else we have? Oh my God. I'm forgetting Cable, Wolverine. So we have other books to cover while we're still covering maximum security. So we'll still continue our coverage over the idea of the X-Men. But anyways, when it comes to maximum security, it all began with one single book. The idea of maximum security, dangerous planet. And really, the whole entire event does get kicked off because of Charles Xavier. Let me explain. You see, for Charles Xavier, okay, so for Charles, as we all know, the dude is always just leaving the X-Men behind for some unknown reason, right? But the last time he left because, well, for Charles Xavier and the X-Men, they had found a small group of Skrulls that are technically labeled as mutants in their own race. And here's the reason why. They have powers. And so usually if you're a Skrull that's a deviant or a mutant, you are killed off at birth or you're used as a weapon in war. And so you had Charles and the X-Men go out of their way to save a small group of Skrulls that were labeled as, well, mutants. Now, after that, you had Charles say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go with them and help them free the rest of their people who are, again, labeled as mutants in the Skrull Empire. And so you had Charles form a new group, Cadre K. And so as you get to the opening pages of the storyline, we pick up with somebody from the Skrull Empire complaining about Charles Xavier. Because you had Charles and Cadre K go out of their way to basically stop a birthing process. And again, remember, if you are a mutant, once you have two options once you're born. You can die at birth or be used as a weapon. And so you had Cadre K go out of their way to save young children who had the possibility of being killed off for just being a mutant, for being a deviant in the Skrull race. And so this guy right now is complaining to the Intergalactic Council. Now, this is our first time seeing this council in Marvel Comics, right? Now, the idea of this council is really more like different alien races from different 8 galaxies from the Marvel universe coming together to kind of form this huge council that's led by the Shi'ar Empire. Now, with that being said, when it comes to the Shi'ar Empire, it's their leader right now leading this meeting, and now be Leandra, of course, as you all know, the space girlfriend of Charles Xavier. Now, when Leandra, she hears, his complaints, but for her and some other alien races out there, they have like high respect for the human race. But again, you have some out there who don't have any respect for the human race at all, like the Skrulls. And so she's kind of like, listen, I hear you, but for me personally, this right here does not seem to be a big deal. Now, hold on to that right there, because you didn't have the Skrull guy say, you know what, how about this? Let's go ahead and use, and guys, I'm going to most likely mispronounce the name of this, but let's go ahead and use the Mandavian justice system. Now, it's a set of crystals that has the ability to connect the minds of every single person in this meeting right now for the council. And so if everyone agrees together that, hey, someone is guilty, all different crystals go black. And so now it's no longer up to Leandra, it's now up to every single person in this council meeting. But the meeting has to go on, right? And so we also learn here that there is a new alien race outside the 8 galaxies also right now trying to join the council. And of course, they arrive and they are called the Rule. Now, what they're trying to do right now is build connections with other empires from the 8 different galaxies by, using trades like, weapons and other kind of stuff like that and science stuff. Anyways, when it comes to the rules, they're like, hey, you know what? We're great people and we all hope we all get along together. But while you have them being introduced, Leandra gets a report, another report, and she has to tell somebody some unfortunately bad news by saying like, hey, listen, Bartos of Krylor, sorry, your planet has been completely destroyed. And we kind of find out by the hands of Ego the Planet. Now, for Ego the Planet, around this time in like Marvel Comics, his main goal was to find other planets that were kind of like him, sentient. The problem was that he was not finding any. And so it seems like right now he has been driven mad, but the idea that he's the only planet in the entire universe, most likely that is, well, sentient. And so he goes around, finds different planets and say, hey, awake, be like me, be sentient. And when those other planets do not wake up, he gets angry and destroys them completely. Now, of course, you do have some of the alien races now kind of getting the idea of like wondering what to do when it comes to Ego the Planet, because Homeboy is going around and just wrecking planets left and right. And so you do have some of the alien races say, well, why not go ahead and call up the humans? Because the humans have dealt with this guy before, so most likely they can handle him again. But again, you have some folks kind of like, are you crazy? Like, the humans are a problem. They're the problem we have right now for most of us. So, of course, there's a huge debate happening. Now, for the new species rule, they tell Leandra, like, hey, I know we're not official at the council yet, but like, can we also help out here? Like, we have some weapons and other things that could possibly help you guys to fight against Ego the Planet. Now, of course, with Ego the Planet being out there, you're going to have some people just trying their best to fight against him. And so you see this whole entire like army or some random group right there trying their best to go up against Ego the Planet. And they just get completely wiped out. Now, Silver Surfer does get involved, but let's not forget, in the past, these two had fought before, and Ego had almost won completely and easily. And so for Silver Surfer, he's kind of like, listen, my main focus right now is to save these people who just right now floating in space. It can die anytime soon. But don't worry, sooner or later, I'm gonna come back here and get justice for these people in other worlds that you had wrecked. But back at the council, the meeting goes on, right? The idea of what should we do with the human race? And the meeting goes in that direction where like they begin to bring up different things the humans have done, the Avengers, the Inhumans, other heroes as well. And some things they do say is like, oh, that's not too bad. Oh, that's not too crazy. But you didn't get into some of the bad stuff. Now, when I say bad, I don't mean like straight up evil, but more of them getting involved with things they had no right to get involved with. And so now hearing these different kind of stories, also involving Ego the Planet and Silver Surfer, you have more and more people begin to change their minds. And let's not forget, it's that jewel system right now. As more and more jewels turn black, that means sooner or later, when they all turn black, for the human race, they are now officially guilty, and something must be done to the human race. But now I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the rules, because again, the rules are right now trying to join the council, but I want to shift our focus over to Centarius. Now for Centarius, him being there to rep the actual rule empire is him talking in private to somebody else about the idea of putting more pressure on the council. So we kind of get the idea that everything happening right now is most likely because of the rule race. But this now kind of leads us into the big problem of the storyline, again, being Ego the Planet, but also like what to do with the human race, because you do have, the Empire, the Council, trying their best to fight against Ego the Planet. Now, the problem is that while that is happening and you have Ego just wiping out ships left and right because they do not stand a chance against them, Leandra sees something. She's a ship right now landing on Ego the Planet. Is Cadre K. And guys, remember, Cadre K is a group of Skrulls that were labeled as mutants that are being led by Charles Xavier. So with Charles being there, it's kind of like, oh my God, Charles, what are you doing right now? And so this kind of leads into really us seeing different things happening all at once. So, like for example, you have Charles Xavier trying to access the mind of Ego the planet. Now, while trying to do that, you also have Silver Surfer come back as well, trying to help out with the situation. So it's kind of like cool. We have two different things happening right now. You still have the Shi'ar Empire also attacking as well, but like all these different things are happening. And while things are happening left and right, you also have the world move in. Now, when they move in, they use a weapon that kind of helps bring down Ego the planet, puts him in a slumber. Before he goes to sleep, though, he does release a huge amount of psychic energy. And once he does that, it knocks out everyone who's on that planet. Not everyone, but most of the people. Now, for Charles, he has to escape with Cadre K, but they're also being attacked by Leandra and the Council. And so they do get away, except for one of them. One member of Cadre K gets left behind. Now, the one to be captured, her name is Z-Can. And for Z-Can, she does try to speak, good words about Charles Xavier, what he's trying to achieve. And honestly, as you all know, it's just him wanting the best for a certain group of people. Like he did for the mutant race on Earth, doing the same thing right now for the mutants of the Skrulls. But they're not listening because, again, for this whole entire council right now, more and more people are turning their backs on the human race. More and more jewels for the justice system turning black, left and right. More black gems. And so with all that happening, Leandra's kind of like, this sucks. Like, I can't change their minds. But then she gets word of the timekeepers who at the end of time have been killed off by, of course, they were killed off by Kang the Conqueror. So just like that, more issues have come up because Kang the Conqueror is a human. And so just like that, all the gems turn black. Now, you also have Centaurea say, we don't have to wipe out the human race. No, there is another way. And this leads into the whole idea of maximum security. And so with that being said, guys, okay, so we're going to go ahead and continue our coverage over maximum security. Here's the thing, because I found some reading orders online. And you know how I feel about tie-ins, guys. That sometimes tie-ins do a great job actually tying into the main storyline. You have some tie-ins that do absolutely nothing. And you have some tie-in that do like that small little piece just to get that label like, ooh, we're a tie-in, but not really a good tie-in at all. And so when I found different reading orders, they're like, hey, you gotta read Spider-Man because it leads into maximum security. And I'm like, okay, I'm fine. I'll sit down and read the Amazing Spider-Man issues number 22, 23, and 24. Now, this is technically volume 2, the Howard Mackie run, and I kind of heard like different things when it came to Howard Mackie's run on Spider-Man. Like for some folks out there, I have heard they loved his run, and I heard some folks say they hated his run. Now, occasionally you have folks who like fall right into the middle, right? Like, it's okay. It's all right. But we'll cover a 3-issue storyline that leads into the main event, I guess, for maximum security. But honestly, not really. Like, this whole storyline could be in this over there, away from the entire event. And I'm kind of wondering if there is an omnibus for this event. If there is one, they tie these 3 issues in as well, because for me personally, it didn't do anything with the main storyline. And so as we get into the opening pages for Amazing Spider-Man issue number 22, well, we pick up with Eddie Brock. Now, for Eddie Brock, he had just lost his wife recently. And honestly, we can talk more about that later on in maybe a different video. But the idea of him losing his wife is like really getting to him. And of course, it should. His wife died. But when it comes to Eddie Brock, he blames Spider-Man for her death. Now, while at her grave, he didn't see someone wanting to talk to him. Really, they want to see his Venom suit. And so we see Eddie change into Venom and try to fight against this mystery person. But we're kind of left to wonder, who is this mysterious person who wanted to see the symbiote suit so bad? Now we also got to go ahead and switch over to Peter Parker, kind of get an idea of like where was Peter Parker at around this time in Marvel Comics. So when it came to Peter Parker, right, him and Mary Jane in the 1990s they were married, but going into 2000s they were kind of not kind of they were just splitting up. And so for Peter, he has been staying with Randy Robertson. And so with them two being roommates right now, we also have some other side characters as well that do kind of play somewhat important roles in Peter's life around this time in Marvel Comics. So you got like Glory Grant, you got Jill Stacy. As you all know, Jill Stacy is the cousin to Gwen Stacy. It was Marvel being kind of like, hey guys, so like Mary Jane's gone, so why not Jill Stacy? Now for Jill, her father Arthur is also here as well. Not right now in the picture, but like in the city as well. And also her brother. But anyways, when it comes to Peter Parker and Robbie, they're kind of like freaking out because they don't have enough money for food. You can cover rent, but not for food or like other things as well. So you have Glory say like, hey, you know what? I got y'all. But then for Jill, her father calls and like, hey, come home now. And so Jill's like, fine, I'll go home. But it's also Peter saying I'll go with her because you know what? Her father will stay nearby Aunt May's house. He can see Aunt May while being on the side of town. Now, once you do have Peter and Jill get over to her father's house, man, Arthur is ticked off because he's afraid of the idea of another character coming after him, and that would be Senator Ward. Now, Senator Ward is going to be very important for the entire storyline, really. He's the main bad guy of the book, but it's the idea of us wondering, like, why in the world would a senator be coming after Arthur and also, well, his daughter Jill and his son Paul? Now, when it comes to Arthur, he tells Jill and like Paul to stay here. Now, Paul, Jill's brother, is kind of like, no, I'm not staying here. I'm getting out. I'm tired of you, Dad, being so paranoid. Now, you have Arthur kind of show Paul like, listen, you're going to do what I say because I'm your father kind of things. It's like really, rough there. Anyway, so once you do have Peter kind of break the fight up and stuff, you have Peter place a spider tracer on Arthur. And the reason why, because for Peter, he remembers that in an earlier issue that Arthur did try to kill off Ward, but of course he stopped or he failed. And so is Peter wondering if there is a possibility that Arthur might go after, well, the senator. But now we pick up with a lady known as Miss Strong calling into the office of the senator in Washington, D.C. She has to talk to him. But the thing is, he's out of town. We also kind of learned that he did something to her. And it does kind of seem like that her whole entire body is slowly, well, melting away. Now we're also kind of given this like random moment where is Spider-Man trying to follow Arthur, but like at the same time, him being Spider-Man, he gets easily caught up in other things that are not really involved with the main storyline. Like, for example, there is this group, better known as, and guys, their name is kind of funny to me, but they're better known as the WPTV. Now, it basically stands World Peace Through Violence. Like this random group with some weapons, and you have Peter Parker on his way to just stop them. And once he does that, he can then like shift his focus back onto the idea of finding Arthur and figuring out Arthur's going to go after the senator or not. And now we do switch over to Arthur. We see him meeting up at a spot where he meets up with Ranger. Now we met Ranger, not only us, like the channel, but like if you're reading Spider-Man around this time, Marvel Comics, he appeared in an earlier storyline involving, again, Spider-Man. Now, when it comes to Ranger, him and Arthur, they go way back. And matter of fact, part 2 of this video, gonna learn a tad bit more about both characters and their past. Now, it's the two of them kind of agree on the idea the senator gotta go. But also you have Arthur realize, sorry, not Arthur, you have Ranger realize that Arthur has been followed by Spider-Man because he does find Spider-Man's tracer on him. And so with that happening, the tracer goes off. So for Peter, he goes back home for the night, try his best to get some rest, but unfortunately only gets like 2 hours sleep, wakes right back up and goes right back out there to be Spider-Man. Now, with him being Spider-Man, he also runs into Eddie Brock. Here's the thing though, Eddie Brock no longer has the Venom suit. And so is Peter wondering what in the world right now is going on when it comes to Eddie not having his good old classic Venom suit. But you didn't have Peter knock out Eddie. And we kind of find out here that when it came to Arthur, what he did was he kind of played around with the spider tracer. It didn't kind of mess with Peter Parker's spider sense to make Peter Parker go towards the spider tracer, kind of like calling out to him. And so once you have Peter arrive, because these two characters have met before, both as Peter Parker and Arthur, but Spider-Man and Arthur, you have Arthur saying like, I need your help because you and I are going to kill off the senator. And it's kind of like, whoa, that's a huge jump right there in the storyline. But then, and we kind of find out that the senator was the one who had stolen the Venom symbiote from Eddie Brock. And the reason why, because apparently, he also has some kind of alien thing going on inside his body. And so he wants to learn more about the idea of a symbiotic between a human and an alien. And so it's him hoping to learn a lot from the Venom symbiote. That's really it. But as we transition into part two kind of begins the process of us learning like the backstory between Arthur and Ranger and also the Senator. And so when it comes to Spider-Man, he's kind of like, dude, listen, Arthur, in case you didn't know this, I'm a hero and big H right there. I don't kill people, but it's kind of like, no, you don't understand how dangerous he truly is. Now, while you have the two guys talking to one another, the entire place is attacked. And so you have our two characters right now just barely being able to escape from this random attack in his home. But now we're kind of getting into the part of the storyline where we're going to jump back and forth between the past and the present day. So we pick up in the past right now, 15 years ago, and we pick up with Arthur, Ranger, and also, well, the Senator. Now, apparently they're working for the government right now, and they had a mission to go after like Hydra, kind of bring down one of their big plans. The problem was that somehow in some way, Hydra found out they were coming, and so our three characters right now are trying to escape. Trying to get far away because they're getting attacked left and right. Now, for Ranger, he believed even back then, 15 years ago, the Senator was somebody who could not be trusted. And most likely is the reason why their whole entire plan had fell apart. Now, that part right there is somewhat important for like this whole entire chapter of this storyline. You'll see here in a moment, right? But as we do kind of go back to the present day, but as we do switch over to the Senator, what we're seeing right now with his character, at least at the moment, is really more of him like, done studying the Venom suit. So he throws it away like, hey, I'm done with that. Bye. But then he calls one of his guards in and like, we see him once again this weird like alien form, but also turn this other person into basic goop and they die right there. It's kind of like he had to absorb them or kind of like do something with them. But then we kind of move on because we had to go back over to Spider-Man and Arthur and we see Ranger appear, right? And you have Ranger grab Arthur to go away. Now for Peter, he wants to follow them, kind of figure out what exactly is going on here because Peter does not have the full backstory yet. Matter of fact, for us as the readers, we don't either, right? So it's kind of like, where are we going with this whole entire storyline? But getting back into that flashback, right? The flashback does kind of give us a better idea of like the Senator because you have the three characters, Ranger, Arthur, Senator, all hiding out at the moment. But while hiding out, it's really more of Senator trying to rebuild his connection with Ranger, with Arthur, because for the Senator, they can't believe that he's a traitor. Like, hey, we believe you're a traitor. We believe right now you're helping out Hydra. But it's him saying like, no, guys, I'm trying to tell you the truth. Like, I'm in it with you guys. Like, I would never betray your trust and stuff. But you didn't have Ranger say, but you are a politician. And that right there is kind of important because it's him saying like, you will do anything to make yourself look better in the eyes of other people. And so it kind of shows no matter what, Ranger and also for Arthur, they are never going to trust Senator. And the thing is, they're kind of right. And we're also kind of given a couple of pages, kind of give a small break in the storyline. Like, for example, you got Peter Parker going back home to relax. He's also kind of worried about the idea of like Randy finding out that he is Spider-Man. But like for right now, for his own life, he has a lot on the table at the moment. But then we kind of have the book kind of also promoting a brand new Green Goblin series. As a matter of fact, no, we covered the other Green Goblin series that came before this one. Yeah, because it was part of Onslaught. So this is a whole brand new, at the time, Green Goblin series. It's kind of like, what is the Green Goblin truly up to at the moment? But later on the night, we do see Peter trying to sneak out before Randy sees him and everything. Goes back out the night as Spider-Man all over again to hopefully find Arthur and kind of figure out what is the full storyline behind Arthur, Ranger, and also the Senator. And so now we're going back into the flashback once again. Now, this time when we do, it's kind of showing that Ranger was right, that the Senator is somebody couldn't trust back then, he can't trust right now in the present day. And the reason why I'm saying that, because when they get inside the Hydra base, it's like, cool, we're inside. And their only task was to blow the place up. That's it. But for the Senator, that's a no. What he wants to do is now get a sample of the work Hydra has been working on, some alien stuff. So he's okay with the idea of like betraying betraying Ranger and also betraying Arthur to get this alien sample, because he knows that this small sample could possibly help him in so many different kinds of ways. He's only looking out for himself. And that's really it, right? And so when it comes to him, he's able to get a sample and disappear. But the flashback continues on, right? And with the flashback continuing on, we kind of learn a tad bit more what happened to, well, the Senator. You see, he had been secretly working with a group called the Xenox. Now, they've been around for a good while in Marvel Comics, but they're kind of like a background group, right? Now, here's the thing, because they got left behind on Earth many years ago, but one of them died. And so what Hydra did was they used one of the Xenox to help create a brand new virus. Of course, a sample that Senator has at the moment. And so the Senator had been working secretly with the Xenox. With all that being said, in his flashback, Ranger and also Arthur tracked him down. They try to stop him. Of course, a gunfight happens, but one of the bullets of Ranger hits the container that's holding the virus. And so it spreads all around the Senator. Now, he was able to escape, but as we go back to the present day, we see that for the Senator, he had his virus growing inside of him the entire time for the last 15 years. And it basically changed him. It evolved him, made him something different. And so we see him trying to use other people who are also now being affected by the virus and now being used to go after Jill. Now, luckily for Jill, Spider-Man is there, so is Arthur, so is Ranger. But you didn't have our heroes be confronted by the Senator, but also he had reunited with the Xenox as well, because again, when they helped spread this virus across the entire world, this virus that could possibly kill every single human on the earth. And this leads into the final chapter of the storyline, but also kind of like the supposed tie-in for maximum security. And so as we get into the next chapter, right, it opens up a huge fight where you have the Senator and his like Xenox and also his creatures fighting against Arthur, Ranger, and Spider-Man, right? As the battle goes on, though, you didn't have like Arthur get grabbed by Senator and they're able to leave with him. Now, here's a problem, though, because Spider-Man, he's trying his best to protect Jill, to protect Arthur, because, well, again, Gwen Stacy died, their cousin, and her father died as well. Again, their cousin. So his mind right now, no more Stacys can die. And so he leaves, even though you have Rangers say like, dude, I'm here to help you. Allow me to help you to figure out where in the world Senator had took Arthur to. Now, we're also kind of given a couple of pages here that kind of shows like, ooh, here we go, maximum security, because you have all these different aliens popping up left and right. And we'll come find out later on that there have been a lot of reports being made about different aliens popping up left and right across the world. So again, we're not actually into the whole event just yet, but getting right there before we dive into the first official chapter of maximum security. Now, when we do switch back over to Peter Parker, is Peter right now back at home, right? But it's also Peter running into Randy and also Glory. Now, you have the two characters tell Peter like, hey, listen, things kind of popping off left and right across the world right now. So kind of hinting again at the idea of like, the whole maximum security storyline is currently happening. But while you do have Peter having a conversation with Randy, he doesn't realize that his body has been affected thanks to the senator. Now, you also have Peter go over to Aunt May's house. And again, he has no idea that once again, he has been affected. We as the readers can tell because the way his body looks. But for Peter, he has no idea still. But then you have Peter realize that someone's outside waiting for him, and come to find out it's Ranger. Now, when it comes to Ranger, he figured out that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, but also it's him telling Peter that you have been affected by the senator. Now, when it comes to Ranger, he had also in the past been affected as well. But it's him saying, like, you don't understand when it comes to the idea of you being affected. When you're around other people, you also infect them as well, thanks to the senator. And so their main goal now is to work together and to hopefully find a senator, find Arthur, but to hopefully also find a cure to save all the lives who could be affected by this brand new virus that was technically created by Hydra. And so this kind of leads into the ending of the storyline where we kind of find out why the senator hates Arthur so much. Because of a lady. You see, for Arthur, he had taken the woman that the senator wanted and they got married. And so it really did bother Senator a lot. But also for the senator, he's patient zero. The virus at this point had killed off most of his body. He's on the verge of death. And so what he wants to do is he wants to transfer his mind over into the body of Arthur, but give Arthur the cure as well to the virus. So he get a fresh start with a brand new body, a brand new life. Now, of course, you do have Spider-Man arrive and also Ranger, and this leads into a big battle. And the battle kind of ends on the note where you have the senator, he turns into a huge mass of tissue. Now, because he had the cure on his body, once he does explode, the cure also explodes as well, but turning into a mist that spreads across the entire city, curing anybody who may have been affected by the virus. That's really it. And guys, for me personally, this was not really a tie-in to Maximum Security at all, because honestly, only what, 2, 3, 4 pages were used to kind of hint at the idea of Maximum Security. Besides that, this storyline was all about Peter Parker. With that being said, guys, okay, so when it comes to our coverage over Maximum Security, we're now going to dive into the Iron Man tie-ins. Now, hear me out, guys, because there is technically 3 tie-ins for Iron Man, right? But the first 2 does take place prior to the first issue of Maximum Security issue number 1, the main storyline. The final chapter, the final tie-in does take place after that first issue. And so what I want to do here is that I kind of want to sit down and only cover the first 2 issues and then cover the third one after we have covered the first issue of Maximum Security. Because again, the first issue does kind of lead perfectly into what's happening in the third chapter of the Iron Man tie-ins. And some of the tie-ins after the first issue do kind of a good job of tying into the actual storyline. And Iron Man issue number 35 is a good example of that in a way, because it does get a tad bit weird though. But anyways, getting into the first chapter of today's video, we see Tony Stark right now on a date with Rumiko Fujikawa. And I really hope I pronounce her last name correctly. I always struggle with names. But when it comes to Rumiko, okay, so when Tony was gone because of Heroes Reborn, right? His company is out there by itself. And so what happened was her company, her father's company, had bought out Tony Stark's company and it kind of like a merger. Now, even though you had Tony come back in the picture again, him and her had to kind of work together. Now, over time, when these 2 characters, they begin to fall in love with one another. And so right now, it's the 2 of them out on a date with one another. It's kind of nice, right? Now, of course, they go to his hotel to do the you know what. When he wakes in the morning time, he realized that she is no longer around. Now, she did leave a note behind saying like, hey, listen, I got something planned for us tonight and it's gonna be special. So be ready by 9 for our special date tonight. Now, for Tony, while being up, he begins to watch the news. While watching the news, you have Tony Stark realize that a bank robbery is happening nearby him, right? So for Tony Stark, with him being a hero, he wants to get involved, right? And so you have Tony go out of his way to try to handle that situation. Now, at first for Tony, his main goal is to work with the police on this situation. So while you do have Tony and police try to figure a plan out when it comes to handling these bank robbers, what we kind of find out, these bank robbers are teenagers. Now, again, while you do have Tony and police working together, out of nowhere, here comes Speedball, just rushing in and causing an entire scene to pop off just like that. Now, when it comes to Speedball, we already know that he's part of the New Warriors, right? Now, the New Warriors were a new team in the 1990s that became really popular for Marvel Comics. But for Speedball, he's here right now trying to handle this situation. Here's the problem though. Him and Tony, they got some bad blood, and let me explain. You see, for Tony Stark, he had created this sentient armor, and his sentient armor decided to do its own thing without Tony being there. Like, for example, attacking the New Warriors, really trying to kill off the New Warriors, and also, well, Speedball. And so for Speedball, he believed it was Tony who was trying to attack the New Warriors, but in reality, it was just a sentient armor doing its own thing. Now for Tony, you do have to work alongside with Speedball to handle this situation. But here comes the next problem. All the different bank robbers, who are again just teenagers, they begin to OD. So for Tony, he begins to freak out. He grabs all of them and takes them over to a nearby hospital. Now, later on that night, we see Tony kind of being upset about the idea of Speedball not really liking him at the moment. Because for Tony, he hates the idea of other heroes kind of looking at him in a different kind of light, a negative kind of light. And so for Tony, he's kind of hoping that him and Speedball can possibly work things out. But then he remembers something that, let's not forget, his new girlfriend, Rumiko, had invited him out for a party tonight, some kind of special date. And the thing is, it's a costume party. And we kind of find out this costume party had been created by a character known as Maximus Power, Dr. Maximus Power. Now, he's a brand new character in the world of Marvel Comics, and guys, I'm going to tell you right now, outside of this storyline, he never appears again in Marvel Comics. But when it comes to Maximus Power, he throws these parties for really people who can afford to come to the party. You see, you gotta pay like $10,000 to be able to attend this kind of party. Now, he tells you like, hey, your money is going to go to research and also like other kind of projects I have going on in the city, right? And so it's him kind of like saying he's helping folks out, but in reality, it seems like there's a possibility he's holding on that money for himself or for other reasons as well. Now, with that being said, once you do have, Tony and also Rumiko arrive at the party, we kind of find out that Tony has to dress up like Steve Rogers, Captain America, and I find it hilarious. But you did have Power appear. Now, when he does appear, is him right now kind of, thanking everybody for attending the party, right? But also is him saying like, guys, you know what? All that money you gave me is going to be used for great things down the road. But you didn't have Power show off something he has been working on, this new drug. And this new drug allows you to have powers for 1 single hour. And so we do see different people take the pill and kind of show off different abilities. Now for Tony, he already knows this is a problem. And for Powers, he has to be stopped right now. And so you have Tony being able to sneak out the party, right? And once he does that, he calls up for his Iron Man suit and then sneak back into the party. The thing is, you have all these different people begin to attack him left and right. But as the chapter closes, we kind of find out he's now being attacked by Rumiko, his brand new girlfriend, who had apparently also taking the pill and gain powers, and kind of seems like she's now She-Thing. Now, the second chapter of the storyline really does focus more on the idea of seeing Iron Man trying to handle this situation because, yes, he does have Remiko, but he also has other people who were at that party who took that drug and now they're going around with powers going all crazy and stuff. Now, when it comes to Remiko, she actually has the powers of the absorbing man. So anything she touches, her body changes into that material. And that becomes an actual problem down the road in this whole entire scene. But for Iron Man, he realized that he's trying to handle her, the other people, but also trying his best to stop powers from getting away. And so right now, his hands are completely full. But getting back over to Remiko, because again, for Remiko, she has the powers of the absorbing man. So anything she touches, her body can turn to that material. So like, for example, right now, her body is made out of glass. Now, hold on real quick, because we also kind of see here that she's not really able to think straight. It seems like her mind has been altered by the drug, because right now she's full of rage. You see, for Tony Stark, she has no idea that Tony is Iron Man. And so every single time she's with Tony and wants to spend time with Tony, something always happens because of Iron Man. And then out of nowhere, Iron Man appears, but Tony disappears, and she does lose her chance to hang out with the man she's in love with. And so she blames Iron Man for not really being able to have a proper relationship with Tony Stark. And so right now, she's full of rage. But again, the drug she took kind of altered her mind. But Tony realized he can't fight against her. Her body is made out of glass. Now, once you do have time kind of pass by, the drug does, run off and she turns back to normal. And the same goes for everyone else, which now allows Tony to go after, Maximus' power. And so this leads into a small battle taking place between Tony Stark and also Maximus' power. Now, here's the thing, because for power, while trying to get away, he took different kinds of drugs to give him different kinds of abilities, right? And so for Tony, he's kind of struggling. Now, there is one thing I do want to point out, that for power, even though he's fighting against Tony, he hates the idea of seeing people being killed off because of his mistakes or because of his battle against Iron Man. And so he does go out of his way to make sure that people are still well protected while battling against Tony Stark. But while he is trying to escape, Tony finds the briefcase that was holding on to the different kind of drugs that give different kinds of powers. And he realized every single vial is empty right now except for one of them. And that would be the power of telepathy. Of course, the power to be able to read other people's minds. Now, this part right here is very important. Let me explain why. Because you didn't have Tony go out of his way to throw all those different kind of vials at Powers. And with him doing that, Powers then gained the ability of telepathy. The problem is that he is unable to control that power. And then there is some kind of massive feedback where it seems like the feedback had also affected Tony, leaving Tony wondering what in the world Power has done to him. Now, this last part for chapter 2 kind of begins the process possibly of us getting into maximum security, because we do pick up with like these two random people. Now they do represent, like they're supposed to represent Ma and Pa Kent over in Superman comics. But anyways, for these two characters in their farm, something does crash nearby their farm. Now for the Ma, the mother, she's all like, this is perfect. I always wanted a chance to raise a baby, and that alien baby can be my baby I raised and everything. And so she forced her husband about his way to get the supposed child and bring the child inside. The problem is that when they open up the blanket, this beam of light just starts coming out of nowhere. Okay, so getting back into our coverage over maximum security, we're still kind of like in the preludes of this event. So like covering everything that kind of leads into the first issue of maximum security. Now, we had just covered the Amazing Spider-Man tie-ins not too long ago. And we saw those tie-ins right there that technically only like 2 to 3 pages were properly being used for the event. The rest is really more of Peter Parker handling a different problem. But now I'm going to cover another set of tie-ins for Spider-Man that come from the Peter Parker Spider-Man series. And these two issues right here do kind of work together to kind of lead into the idea of maximum security, but also introducing a new villain for Spider-Man to deal with. You see, as we get into the first chapter of today's video, Peter Parker Spider-Man issue number 23, you see we pick up with a character known as Gordon Thomas. Now, when it comes to Gordon Thomas, he'll become a new villain for Spider-Man to deal with. And matter of fact, he will stick around for a good while in Marvel Comics, leading into the idea of Civil War, I want to say. But for Gordon Thomas, we don't know much about his character just yet. All we know right now is that he has a love for art. The love for words being used in art, like, poems and things like that, stories and things. And so for Gordon, it does kind of seem like he is a man who's now officially broken. That it seems like everything has been taken away from him. And so we see him kind of putting together his own little outfit of becoming a super villain, but he paints an R on his body. That R stands for retribution, which means that most likely he's trying to go after somebody, it seems like. But right now, it's the birth of a brand new super villain. But I want to go ahead and switch over to Peter Parker. Here's the reason why, because in our last video for Maximum Security, when we had covered the Amazing Spider-Man tie-ins, I kind of had mentioned the fact that when it came to Peter Parker and Mary Jane, they were, no longer seeing one another. They were kind of on the verge of divorce. That's not the case. Around this time in Marvel Comics, Peter Parker believed that Mary Jane was dead. And so right now, we're seeing a guy trying to live his life, but also kind of still dealing with the idea that he lost his wife. And so it's him still wearing his wedding ring, but having a hard time, removing it. And so that's the current status quo for Peter Parker at this time in Marvel Comics. And so now we do switch over to Gordon Thomas, right? Now, for Gordon Thomas, him right now just walking around the area. And you have some random guys want to mess with him because one, he looks different, but also two, they want to rob him as well. And so you have Gordon really being able to defend himself against these two guys very easily by using different weapons. And these weapons, they're all shaped like different letters, A or V and things like that. But he's then able to take these guys out very easily and kind of go on with his day. And something else I do want to bring up is the idea of Peter Parker living with Randy Robertson, the son to Robbie Robertson, of course, who works at Daily Bugle alongside with J. Jonah Jameson. Now, when it comes to Randy, he has his own kind of problem going on in this storyline. The idea that for Randy right now, he keeps having these weird dreams, right? That kind of just happens left and right. And also he's completely exhausted. Even though he does sleep all day, he always wakes up completely exhausted. So that's his own kind of thing going on in this storyline. And we do switch over to the Daily Bugle, where you have JJ now getting word about the idea of Gordon, this new super villain, going around the place right now, attacking people left and right. And so for JJ, of course, the dude wants some photos for his paper and kind of asking Robbie, where in the world is Peter at? Now, for Robbie, it's kind of like, dude, you know where Peter's at right now. He's going through a lot. The idea that he lost his wife. But if Robbie's saying listen, maybe he should also stay away from you as well. Now, for JJ, he believes the best thing for Peter is to do some work to kind of help keep his mind off the idea of losing Mary Jane. But as we do switch back over to Peter Parker, we see Peter right now out with Randy, Glory, and also Jill. Matter of fact, guys, around this time in Marvel Comics, when it came to Jill Stacy, right? She's the cousin of Gwen Stacy. And so it was Marvel kind of teasing the idea idea of the possibility of Peter, like, moving on from Mary Jane and I'm guessing getting with Jill Stacy. Now, when it comes to Peter, while being at the bar, he runs into another man who's also wearing his wedding ring. Now, for Peter, he believes that this man is also somebody who had lost his wife. And so for Peter, he kind of felt like he made a new friend. You had Gloria inform Peter, like, no, sometime at a bar, you might run to a guy who does wear his ring, and there is a possibility that he's a gay man looking for another gay man. And so for Peter, he's kind of like, oh, I didn't know that. Now, when it comes to Spider-Man, he does run into Gordon, right? Now, here's the thing, because for Spider-Man, I feel like personally, this battle right here should have been wrapped up in like 5 minutes tops, because Gordon Thomas is just a regular guy. But either way, it's him giving Peter Parker an actual challenge here. I mean, like, for real. Peter is struggling. Now, we could say that it's really more Peter trying to hold back, right? And even though he's doing that, there's also the idea that Gordon has all of these different kinds of weapons that are shaped as different kinds of letters. Who knows? But anyways, for Gordon, he is using some kind of gas to make Peter a tad bit drowsy. And so because of that, Spider-Man is not really able to chase after Gordon. Now, while you do have Gordon leaving, he also says this right here, that at 7 o'clock, he will go after his number one enemy. His enemy will fall, and then he runs away. And so, well, you didn't have Peter just go back home again, right? Now, for Peter, being hit that gas and a little drowsy, he goes to bed. Now, here's the thing, because while going to bed, he has this kind of weird dream. He sees Mary Jane. He sees a spider. But the dream begins to talk to him, or someone does in his dream, where it says, "Don't be afraid. You are saved. You are loved and accepted. We wish you no harm. Don't be afraid." Then they say, "Wake up." And when he does, he's then confronted by a group of aliens that say, "Greetings, Earth Unit. Peter Parker, we require your assistance." And this kind of leads into the crossover, the idea of maximum security. Now, to be technically honest, when it comes to I can't stop laughing, y'all. I'm sorry. When it comes to this chapter for the tie-in for maximum security, again, another Spider-Man video where it does nothing at all when it comes to setting up the idea of maximum security. Because as we get into the opening pages of the second half of this storyline, we learn that for Peter Parker, he is confronted by the Brill Non-Zeke. That name just gets to me. And they are a alien race that have been going around kind of studying different kinds of species, right? Now, before they explain everything going on to Peter Parker, Peter is also confronted by their attorney, who looks like a regular human being. But apparently, they're saying that they have been abducting Peter and also his roommate Randy for the last couple of days. And let's not forget, when it came to Peter Parker, he'd been having those dreams, and so did Randy. And so with those two having those dreams, now we know why. Because these aliens at night have been abducting them and studying their DNA. And so what they did was they had created this very unique hybrid creature with the combination of Peter Parker's DNA, but also Randy DNA as well, some kind of spider creature. And this is where their attorney comes in, because even though this alien race is responsible for the creation of that creature, saying, well, Peter, it is your DNA. So technically you are the one who should have to go after this creature and bring him down. And so because Peter did sign the legal paperwork, he did technically agree to help out with this situation. And so now it's Peter Parker being Spider-Man to go deal with a spider hybrid that his alien race had created. Now I want to go ahead and switch over to Gordon Thomas, because this is where we kind of learn a tad bit more about his character, right? When it comes to Gordon Thomas, he was a man who fought in a war, right? And the thing was, after being, injured and coming back home, he was then confronted by his wife leaving him with their child. And so for Gordon, this was a guy who lost everything, got injured, his family, his money, his house. And thing is, he did find a new job. He became a signsmith. You know, those guys out there go out of their way to make different signs for different companies. The problem was that the company he worked for got bought out by another company. And so unfortunately, he was laid off and once again had nothing left for him. And so this is a guy who had broken so many times. Now, for Gordon, his main goal is to go after his boss, the one who let him go. Now, on top of that, when it comes to Gordon, his super villain name is Typeface. Like literally, that's his name, Typeface. I cannot kid you guys at all. It's a horrible name. Now, when it comes to Peter Parker, he also kind of realized something, that when it came to Typeface, so his attacks he did earlier, their attacks were done on different signs across the city. But Peter realized that those signs must have belonged to one particular company. And so Peter had asked Robbie to look into it. Robbie did and realized that all the different signs that Typeface had destroyed earlier did belong to one company. And of course tells Peter that, well, Typeface will then try his best to go after the owner of that company. And so Peter realized there's a chance for him to kind of handle both problems at the same time. This alien creature, but also Typeface. So you have Peter head over to where the owner of the company is currently at the moment. And so this kind of leads into the second half of this crazy storyline, supposedly a tie-in for, you know, maximum security, because we do pick up with the idea of Spider-Man now being confronted by this creature, right? And so once you do have Peter be confronted by this creature, he has the creature chase him over to where the owner of that company signs is currently at. And so once you do have Peter arrive there, he does see Typeface trying his best to kill off the owner, his old boss. But you didn't have Peter try to reason with Typeface, saying like, dude, you're not that kind of guy. You are a better person than that. And so you didn't have Typeface remember that one of his fellow soldiers told him, like, when you go home, just live, man. Just live your life. And so because of that, you have Typeface realize that what he has been doing is technically wrong. And so now it's him wanting to help Spider-Man to fight against the creature. And so while you do have the two of them being able to work together, you didn't have Peter being able to teleport the creature back over to the aliens from earlier. So just like that for Spider-Man, he had handled both of his problems in a matter of a few pages. Now, when it comes to the owner, the old boss, the Typeface, right? We see him trying to paint the whole entire situation as a terrorist attack and literally says like, hey, go ahead and call insurance, and I already know who is responsible for the attack done to the factory. And then he blows up the entire building. And so it's him right now trying to pin everything on Typeface. And so for poor Typeface, right when he had decided to turn his life around, now seems like there's a possibility that he might have some company from some, police officers very soon. But to go ahead and kind of close on today's video, we do switch over to Peter Parker. Now, when we do, it's really more of us seeing Peter Parker heading over to that gallery for his showing. Now, again, he's a half hour too late, and most of the customers he could have had already left. But one photo was bought by somebody, a photo of Uncle Ben. And of course, we kind of find out it was Aunt May who bought the photo. And so that does kind of wrap up this storyline. And like I said earlier, guys, for me personally, this had nothing to do with maximum security. So for Spider-Man, both of his tie-ins are kind of pointless. Now, the Iron Man one, it's pretty good, and I'm hoping for the other to be good as well too, when we do kind of get those books down the road. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into our coverage over maximum security. Now, here's the thing, guys, because we're finally diving into the main storyline, but I'm only covering the first chapter of the main storyline today's video to kind of show you like how this whole entire event truly does get kicked off. And then after this one video, I'm going to cover a few more tie-ins before we cover the second chapter of the main storyline. Now, for me personally, the opening pages of this storyline, this first chapter of the main event, kind of threw me off. And here is the reason why. Because we pick up with U.S. Agent. Now, for U.S. Agent, not one of my favorite characters in Marvel Comics, but around this time in Marvel Comics, he kind of got promoted. And let me explain. You see, there was this organization known as the Superhuman Tactical Activities Response Squad, and their main goal was to go after wanted criminals who were superhumans who were kind of all over the world, right? And it kind of felt like that US agent was the best one to kind of go after these different criminals across the world and bring them back to America and put them in prison. Now, when it came to US agent, he was chosen by Val Cooper. And so Val Cooper kind of said, like, you get all types of clearance, basically meaning that no one can stop you wherever you go. If you're trying to go after a criminal in a different country, don't worry, you have our backing. No matter what, you go get those criminals. And so in the opening pages of the storyline, we see him going after Pile Driver, one of the members of the wrecking crew. Now, this battle is really short-lived, and honestly, it does not really matter. What happens after that truly matters for the whole entire storyline, because once you do have, US agent being able to defeat, Pile Driver, you see, when it came to US agent, he kind of realized that one of the guys who was fighting alongside with, Pile Driver is not really a human being. That matter of fact is an alien, better known as one of the Blood Brothers. Now, usually, if one of the Blood Brothers is found, that means that most likely the other one must be nearby. And so for US agent, he got to figure out where could the other Blood Brother be yet. Now, here's the thing, because he does head back over the base of the Superhuman Tactical Activities Response Squad. By the way, that whole entire name is just called STARS. And so he heads back over to STARS to figure out, like, where could the other Blood Brother be at? When he does arrive back to base, they inform him that they got some other issues popping off across the entire world. And this right here does kick off the entire event, the idea of maximum security. Because now for US agent, he's now being informed of different things happening all over the world. At first, it does seem like it's an American problem, but then you got reports coming from all types of areas across the world, from all different countries across the world. And all these different kinds of superheroes, the X-Men, Fantastic Four, the Avengers, and the list goes on and on. Oh yeah, the New Warriors, they're all right now involved in different battles taking place across the world. And so for US agents, you want to figure out what in the world is going on here. Now, the aliens are now being defeated by the different heroes of Earth. They're all being taken to different prisons across the American soil. And so for US agent, he wants some answers. And the only way to get those answers is to go talk to one of the aliens that had decided to invade the Earth, supposedly. And so while going over to one of the prisons that's holding on to a bunch of aliens that had invaded the Earth, for US agent, it's now him being informed by one of the few aliens that does speak English and tells him, like, dude, we're not here to invade the Earth. That instead, we were sentenced here. Like, the Earth is now a prison to hold on to you guys, the human race, but also other aliens that have committed crimes in different parts of the universe. And so something like this happening across the entire world, that means now the Avengers have to officially get involved in this storyline, which also means, like, hey, you know what? It's time to bring in possibly some big hitters, except we don't. Because for Wonder Man, who's a big hitter, he's right now off the board. Over in Avenger Comics, on this time in Marvel Comics, he was kind of hit with an ionic bomb. And so because of that, his body right now is unstable. And so with that happening, they can't use him right now out there in the field. But again, the Avengers, they're now getting all the info they need right now to figure out what exactly is happening across the entire world. Now, for the Avengers, they're going to get a very unwanted guest, and that will be no other than US Agent. Now, hear me out. For US Agent, he was part of the Avengers back in the 1990s in Marvel Comics, right? The thing is, dude just walks in the room and feels like he's in charge no matter what. And the thing is, the Avengers, they don't work for the government. So it's kind of like, dude, you just can't walk into our base and say, hey, I'm in charge, follow my orders no matter what. So of course, you do have the team begin to argue with one another. Now, while you had that happening, you did have Hank Pym call the team, and he kind of realized there's some kind of spaceship or something out there near the Earth right now. And so for the Avengers, they want to go out of their way to investigate what that could possibly be out there in space near the Earth. Now, for US Agent, he's kind of like, no, I'm going to, because of him, he wants to figure out what exactly is going on here because he feels like this right now is also his responsibility. He has to protect America, but also kind of like the entire world as well. And so for our heroes, when they do go out of their way to investigate what could be possibly near the Earth, well, for our heroes, their aircraft or spacecraft is shot out just like that. And then out of nowhere, they're all now being pulled inside this spaceship. And so this kind of begins the process of our heroes kind of figure out what is exactly happening right now to the Earth. Why are all these different aliens being sent to Earth right now without any kind of like reasoning supposedly behind it? And once they're inside, they're then confronted by Ronan the Accuser. Now, right off the bat, you have our heroes believe that the Kree must be behind this kind of attack, right? Because honestly, here is Ronan the Accuser. But Ronan right now is saying, no, that's not really the case at all. That matter of fact, this is right now being done by the Intergalactic Council. Now, like I said in our earlier video, the Intergalactic Council is made up of different empires or species across the entire universe. Well, really only 8 different galaxies in the universe. But they had decided that the humans have done enough across the universe because on different planets, you have the heroes get involved and kind of change how things work on different planets across these 8 galaxies. And so because of that, they're kind of like, humans have done some good, yes, but also done some bad as well and damaged those planets in their own kind of ways. And so you guys were judged and y'all were found guilty. But instead of killing you guys off in one single swoop, we had decided that why not go ahead and turn the Earth into an actual prison and then send other aliens who have also done crimes to your Earth because now you guys are a prison planet. Now, does not stop there because he also says this right here. Because what the Intergalactic Council is kind of hoping for is that with the idea of now Earth being a prison for not just humans, but different kinds of aliens, you're going to have battles take place all over the world. And so with that happening, that means sooner or later, you're going to have the humans be wiped out. But on top of that, the different aliens who are being sent here might also get wiped out as well. And so for the Intergalactic Council, this is the perfect solution on how to deal with the humans, but also how to deal with different aliens who are breaking crimes from the galaxies across the universe. And then you have Ronan the Accuser go after our heroes right back down to Earth and say, you guys are prisoners, so go back to your prison, which again right now is Earth. But this kind of leads into another argument being done between US Agent and also the Avengers. Because for the Avengers right now, they're trying their best to make a game plan. They're like, hey, call the reserves, call the active members. Like we need all hands on deck right now when it comes to this kind of situation. But also, knowing Wasp, I need to go ahead and talk to the UN, but also the president. Now, for a US agent, he's kind of like, no, there's no way this team right here will go unsupervised when it comes to this kind of situation. It's him right now saying like, he has the right to take over the Avengers, to lead the Avengers, to hopefully save the day. Because to him, his main problem right now is that he believes the Avengers will not cross that line when it comes to handling something like this. And for him, he's okay crossing that line. But while you do have debate going on, another call does come in. See, this next call is all about Ego the Planet, and let me explain. You see, in the first chapter of our coverage over this event, better known as Maximum Security, the Dangerous Planet storyline, when it came to that book right there, we saw Ego just going around the universe blowing up planets left and right. And the reason why, because he was trying his best to find other worlds that was just like him, sentient planets. The problem was that if he found a planet that wasn't sentient, he'll get so angry he would go out of his way to destroy the entire planet. And so, just like that, it was a major issue. Now, of course, he was stopped, but come to find out, he was kind of sent to Earth in this weird form where he was just a baby, right? A gooey baby. And he was found by a couple. Now, this part right here will lead into the coverage or the tie-in for Iron Man. But anyways, what you have the book telling us right now, he is constantly growing, absorbing the Earth. In a matter of weeks, there is a chance the entire Earth could be consumed by Ego the planet. And that right there is a major problem. And so the book does end on that note, leaving us wondering, how will our heroes deal with Ego, but also the idea of Earth now being a prison? With that being said, guys, character known as Connie Ferrari. Now, Connie is a new character around this time in Marvel Comics as a love interest for Steve Rogers, who first appeared in Captain America issue number 15 around this volume right here. And again, she was a new love interest for Steve Rogers, a defense lawyer. The problem they have right now is she's a defense lawyer, but for well-known criminals like AIM and also her brother David Ferrari. Now, with that being said, we see her right now just trying her best to run away from all these different alien creatures. Now, her main goal is to get over to Steve Rogers' apartment. Now, for her, she has no idea that Steve Rogers is Captain America. And so for her right now, her main goal is try to protect the guy that she does have feelings for. But luckily for her, Steve does appear, but as Captain America, and helps protect her. Now, once he's done doing that right there, again, her main goal is to get over to his apartment as Steve Rogers. So you have, Steve being like, yeah, go ahead and go. And outside, he does change into his Steve Rogers outfit before she arrives at his front door. And so once you do have Connie arrive at his front door, it's Steve right now pretending to be just good old regular Steve Rogers while hiding his outfit underneath his robe. Now, for Steve Rogers, it does kind of bring up the question, what exactly is going on right now with all of these different creatures? Now, for me personally, I thought like this storyline did take place after the idea of Maximum Security issue number 1. But at the same time, it could take place before that one particular issue, because it's the whole idea that you have the Intergalactic Council say, humans are a problem and they should be locked away. But on top of that, they turn the Earth into a prison planet. And so with them doing that, you now have all these other aliens across the universe being sent over to Earth to live out their prison term for what could be the rest of their lives. And so for Connie and also for Steve, they're kind of wondering like, is this a full-on invasion? Now for Steve, he don't really believe it is a full-on invasion because it's so unorganized. But Steve knows one thing. He needs to go see the Avengers to kind of get a better idea of what exactly is going on right now with this whole entire, aliens popping up left and right. But while you have Steve trying to make his way over to Avengers Mansion, we also see Nick Fury trying his best to figure out what's going on with a different character. Because for Nick Fury, we see him breaking into a computer system that belongs to Hydra, right? And so it's Nick right now saying, let me see if I can track down this one particular person. And that would be David Ferrari, of course, the brother to Connie Ferrari, Steve Rogers' latest love interest. Now, when we do switch back over to Steve Rogers, right, it's him still being good old Captain America, heading over to Avengers Mansion. Here's the problem, because when he arrives there, there's more aliens there. So kind of getting the idea, the whole prison planet thing has officially taken off. You have aliens arriving all over the place, right? And so for Steve, he does fight against the aliens, but then out of nowhere, all the different aliens around him just disappear. And now he's being confronted by a character we have not talked about before, because this character is a D-list character who only appeared over in Thor comics at first. And that would be Mercuro. Now, when it comes to Mercuro, he first appeared over in Thor issue number 204. Now, for Mercuro, he's from a world better known as Gramos. And for Gramos, it was a dying planet. So what he did was he had transferred his mind or his consciousness across the entire universe over to Earth and took over the body of a man known as Carl Sauron. And I really hope I pronounced that last name correctly. Now, when it came to Carl, though, now his body taken over by Mercuro, Mercuro had also detected magical energy nearby. It was Donald Blake, of course, Thor. And so his main goal was then to use that energy to bring his whole entire body over to Earth. And it technically did work, but not all the way. You see, when it came to Mercuro, when he did arrive on Earth, half his body turned red, kind of like a fire side, right? And the other side turned blue, like an ice side kind of thing, and kind of been stuck on Earth ever since then. Now, there have been other storylines over the years in Marvel Comics for his character, but for right now, he's on Earth still pretending to be someone else known as Carl Sauron. And so when it came to Steve Rogers earlier, we saw those aliens just disappear out of nowhere, right? And it's all because of supposedly Mercuro. Now, when it comes to Mercuro, he's right now pretending to be Carl again, the regular human he took over many years ago. And so him being Carl is telling Steve, like, I have this device that can help me get rid of these aliens across the entire world. What I have right now is a smaller version. I have a bigger version on top of the Statue of Liberty. Now, it's also him informing Steve what's going on right now when it comes to Earth being a prison planet by saying, like, your Earth right now, our home, is now a prison planet. These aliens are not coming here by choice. They're being forced here by some other powerful organization. But I have a device to get rid of all of them all at once. But again, it's on top of the Statue of Liberty. But the thing is, I need one more item to pull all of this off. And Steve, that will be your shield. So you have Mercuro, who's still pretending to be Carl, tell Steve, like, hey, your shield releases some kind of sonic vibration that could help my device send all of these aliens back home. Now, of course, when you do have our two characters arrive on top of the Statue of Liberty, well, you then have Steve realize that this was some kind of setup. That for Mercuro, all he wants to do right now is go home himself, and that is really it. And so for Steve's shield, it gives him that ability. The problem is that for Mercuro, as his device goes off, the Statue of Liberty begins to slowly fall apart. And knowing Steve, he's kind of like, listen, this statue cannot fall apart. So of course, he does pull his shield out of Mercuro's device. And with him doing that, of course, the machine begins to haywire and kind of releases feedback of energy that hits Mercuro. Now, with that feedback energy, we're not really told like where Mercuro has been teleported to. All we know right now is that he is no longer around. Like, he's teleported away, and that is officially it. He is now off the board completely. Now, when it comes to Steve Rogers, the book ends. And also, I say, guys, when it comes to these different tie-ins for maximum security, a lot of these tie-ins are really worthless. But at the same time, I want to make sure we cover every single tie-in for you guys out there. So yeah, that is good old Captain America, issue number 36. Now, for the sake of this video being kind of short, I'm going to go and throw in another issue, another tie-in for this event. And that would be The Mighty Thor issue number 30. Now, for issue number 30 for The Mighty Thor, it's one of those issues again where it's kind of like, okay, it got the label of maximum security, but at the same time though, it's not really a massive tie-in like we see for me personally, a later chapter for Iron Man down the road. And so getting into the opening pages of this one particular issue, we pick up with Malekith. Now for Malekith, it's the idea that he's right now kind of celebrating. And the reason why, because he was able to get his hands on the Casket of Endless Winters. Now with this casket, of course, that means that whoever has this powerful item can use a powerful winter storm almost anywhere in the 9 realms. And so for, well, Malekith, he wants to use it right now against Thor. But also he's then able to to send a powerful being, better known as Pentagar, a creature from inside the casket, over to Midgard to hopefully bring down Thor. But now we switch over to Asgard. Now, when we do, it's really more of us picking up with the idea of Odin once again being an Odin sleep. Now, before he did that, he made sure to put someone in charge, and that would be Lady Sif, who's right now watching over Asgard. But the thing is, she also knows that right now Hela is trying her best to claim the soul of Hogun, one of the members of the Warriors 3, who's on Midgard at the moment. Now, when it came to Baldur, he was supposed to deliver this potion to help save the life of Hogun. The problem is that he has not done that yet, but Thor was also supposed to help out as well too when it came to delivering that potion. And the question is now, where in the world is Thor? We kind of learned here that for Thor right now and a few other members of the Avengers, they're all away from Earth right now, but on their way back to it. You see, there was this storyline called Avengers Infinity, and we're not going to sit down and cover it right now. But it's the idea that Thor and a few other members of the Avengers were away from Earth. Now, this part right here does tie into the idea of maximum security because, again, the Intergalactic Council said humans are troublesome and they all should be locked away on Earth. And so right now, as you have our heroes heading back over to Earth, they're then confronted by Galactic Patrol, who's kind of like, hey, you are humans. Why in the world right now are you guys out in space? You guys should be on Earth, and try their best to arrest our heroes. Now, Thor does get very angry and gets rid of them very quickly, but that part right there kind of shows like, yeah, the whole idea of this event is now tying into almost every other book in Marvel Comics, like Thor, for example. And so when we do switch over to, well, Midgard again, Earth, we do pick up with the other two members of the Warrior 3 who are kind of freaking out because their brother, their fellow member, might not be able to make it because right now he's currently in the hospital. And for Jane Foster, she has done so many different things trying her best to save his life. But unfortunately, nothing is working currently. And so it does kind of seem like there's a huge possibility he might die. Now, with all that being said, we then switch over to Baldur. And for Baldur, his main goal right now is how to make it over to Earth. Oh, he's on Earth right now, but trying to get over to Hogun to give him a special potion that will save his life, but also his soul going over to Hela. Here's the problem, because let's not forget, earlier you had Malekith send a creature down from the casket of Endless Winter to attack Midgard, really to go after Thor, to find Asgardian blood. And so, of course, the one Asgardian blood right now is Baldur, not Thor. And so you have this creature just being able to ambush our hero. Now, for our hero Baldur, because he's caught off guard, he's not really able to protect himself. As the battle goes on, it does seem like Baldur might officially lose this battle. But luckily for our boy, some backup does come. And that would be Beta Ray Bill. Now, around this time, Marvel Comics, it was kind of weird for Beta Ray Bill. And the reason why, because he was depowered around this time in Marvel Comics. And so it's him right now trying to figure out how in the world did he regain his powers. But on top of that, he does tell us while being out there in space, he was confronted by the Intergalactic Patrol. They grabbed him and sent him over to Earth. Now, with that being said, with him being there, he does help Baldur fight against this creature, defeat the creature, and now being sent back over to Malekith. And our two heroes do not follow. And here's the reason why. Because with Baldur, he has to make sure to get that potion over to, well, Hogun, the last member of the Warrior 3, who's right now on the verge of death. And so luckily for, Baldur and Beta Ray Bill, they make it in time, give him the potion, and save his soul from being grabbed by Hela. So that storyline right there does get wrapped up very quickly. And the book does kind of end on the note where you have Malekith say, like, sooner or later, he will be coming after Asgard. And that's really it. So again, one of those random tie-ins that don't really do much with the whole idea of the storyline. Like the whole overall storyline is not really being affected by this book at all. With that being said, Okay, so let's go ahead and get back into our coverage over the X-Men, right? And technically, it's also us getting back into our coverage over Maximum Security as well, because this is a tie-in. Now, in my earlier videos, when it came to Maximum Security, I kind of been saying like most of the tie-ins are, well, worthless. And I kind of hate saying that because I always try my best to give, different comics a fair chance, right? But after reading a good chunk of the whole entire event so far, I can say like there are a good amount of tie-ins that are not needed when it comes to the idea of the whole entire storyline because most tie-ins don't do anything at all. That's not the case when it comes to Uncanny X-Men issue number 387. Now, technically, it's also kind of setting things up to come down the road when it comes to our coverage over the X-Men, but also kind of like doing a good job tie into the whole event of Maximum Security. But as we get into the opening pages of the storyline, we do pick up with the callback to the early days of Chris Claremont's run on the X-Men, the whole idea of the Dark Phoenix saga. Now, when it came to the Dark Phoenix saga, we were left to believe it was Jean Grey who had became the Phoenix and died as the Phoenix, and that was it, right? But then many years later, when it came to Marvel Comics, we were trying to bring in more X titles. One of those titles was X Factor, and it kind of felt like it would be a good idea to bring Jean Grey back to life, which they did. But the problem was that how they did it. You see, when it came to Jean Grey, we were told that she never was the Phoenix. Hear me out. What happened was you had the Phoenix say, you know what? To save the life of Jean Grey, to save the life of the X-Men, she made a deal with Jean Grey to allow herself to replace Jean Grey and took the form of Jean Grey. And the real Jean Grey was being held down in some kind of bay in New York until the Fantastic Four and the Avengers had found her together. And so when it came to Jean Grey's status quo, it was she never did became the Phoenix. And that was it, right? But you see, as we get into the opening pages of Uncanny X-Men issue number 387, we're getting this callback to when you have the Dark Phoenix going on a rampage across the universe, right? Where she had destroyed this one particular planet better known as Dabari. Now, when it came to Chris Claremont's run, he showed us like how the whole entire world was obliterated, like killed off in a matter of seconds. And so we're kind of seeing that once again in the opening pages of the storyline for a very good reason why. And you'll see why at the end of this storyline. But we now switch over to Jean Grey and Beast in the present day. Now, with these two characters are out right now buying a few things, everything does seem normal, right? But then they head back over to the hospital because Rogue got injured in an earlier storyline. And so with Jean Grey and Beast going there, when they walk inside, they see two people who had came from Wakanda, came there looking for one particular person. And of course, that would be Storm. Now, we're not really told like flat out why. All we know is that for T'Challa, he has summoned Storm and sent these two to go pick her up. And for Storm, she already knows that she gotta go. But again, we're not really told like what in the world is that connection right now between her and Black Panther, and why in the world is she in his debt right now? Like, what does she owe him for? But either way, she does inform the X-Men that she'll be gone for a while, and that's it. So just like that, Storm has taken off the board for a short period of time. Now, we're also being reminded about the idea of Lee Forrester. You see, Lee Forrester was the ex-girlfriend to Cyclops, right? In the early days of Chris Claremont's run, the X-Men. Matter of fact, someone he dated right after Jean Grey had died in the Dark Phoenix saga. Now, later on, she also did somewhat gain some feelings for Cable, but they never did truly date one another, right? But anyways, for Lee Forrester, in our last video, her and her crew were like stuck out in the middle of the ocean in the middle of a storm. And so you had our heroes go out of their way to save her and her crew lives. Now, when it comes to Lee Forrester being here, it's also kind of setting good things to come down the road. The whole idea of the possibility of the return of Scott Summers. Let me explain. You see, in an earlier storyline, better known as Apocalypse the 12, we saw Scott Summers give up his life to stop Apocalypse by merging bodies with Apocalypse. And the book kind of ended on that note where you have our heroes believe that Scott Summers is officially dead. But lately, been small things happening here and there that kind of hint the idea of Scott Summers coming back to life and also back in the picture again for the X-Men. But I want to go ahead and switch over to, okay, so getting back into maximum security, right? We pick up with the Star Jammers. Now, for the Star Jammers, they're being this like bridging point, this meeting spot for, well, Charles Xavier and Landra. And here's the reason why. Because for Charles Xavier, the dude did have a small hand in the idea of why Earth is now a prison planet in the whole event called maximum security. Because when it came to the Intergalactic Council, they were like, listen, humans are a problem. They basically go to other planets across the universe and like try to fix things. And sometimes they do fix things, but also make things worse for the empires out there in the universe. And so when it came to the Intergalactic Council, they were like, humans should be locked away and turn the Earth into a prison planet. But also other aliens who have done crimes across the universe are also being sent there to Earth. Now, when it comes to Charles Xavier, in an earlier storyline that I completely forgot about, when it came to Charles Xavier, he and the X-Men had discovered a group of Skrulls that were technically labeled as mutants in their own race. Let me explain. You see, with these Skrulls, they have powers, right? But they're only being used as weapons in war, and that's really it. Most of the time, if these Skrulls are born different, they're killed off right at birth. And so for Charles, he says, you guys are basically mutants. And so his main goal was to help lead them into a better life. But that led into a storyline called Maximum Security Dangerous Planet issue number 1. See, we had learned the Skrull Empire was very upset with Charles Xavier, and here's the reason why. Because for Charles, he led his Skrull crew, around different parts of the Skrull Empire to free other mutant Skrulls, but also save the ones who were just born as mutant Skrulls and give them a chance to live a life before being killed off by the Skrull Empire. And so when it came to Skrull Empire, they complained to the Intergalactic Council, and their complaint kind of started the whole idea of why humans should be locked away. It was their complaint first, and then more and more complaints came in all at once. And so because of that, they were like, yeah, go ahead and like lock away the humans on Earth. So it's kind of Charles' fault. But back to this meeting part, right? Because for Charles, he wants to know, like, why in the world his home world right now is a prison planet. Now, it's also her telling him, like, because you humans keep getting involved in so many different things across the entire universe that, like, we had no choice. But it's also her kind of feeling like someone was playing with the whole Intergalactic Council, kind of forcing her hand to take the steps to turn Earth into a prison. So right now, their main goal to figure out like who had a kind of power to force their hand to do that. Because for her, she's the leader of the Shi'ar Empire. But at the same time, though, she has to worry more about her empire than her lover's home world. Now, it's also her asking Charles to go out of his way to find one particular person, and that would be Deathbird, because apparently Deathbird is living up to her name right now across the entire universe. Now, it's also her saying like, hey, I'm going to send down Sarais to kind of talk to your X-Men. Now, Sarais was part of Excalibur back in the day. So it's kind of like, cool, we already know that most likely she'll go meet up with Nightcrawler. But now we switch back over to Jean Grey's X-Men team. Now, for Jean Grey's X-Men team, it's them just chilling in the hospital right now alongside with Rogue. But then out of nowhere, they're getting attacked by these mandroids. Now, mandroids are just robot suits that are being used by, well, regular humans who are right now targeting the X-Men because they are mutants, supposedly. But while you do have our heroes doing their best to fight against these robots, Cable and Jean Grey, their main goal is get the innocent people out of there who are being attacked right now by these mandroids. And so it's still doing a good job protecting innocent people. But we basically learn here that the first attack was diversion, kind of keep most of the team busy. And the reason why, because Jean Grey is the main target for this whole entire attack right now. And again, this is a callback to the very first few pages of the storyline, the whole idea of the Phoenix. And here's the reason why, because we do see a random like group of aliens out of nowhere attacking Jean Grey. Now, of course, this also does tie into the idea of maximum security, but you do have Jean Grey being able to take on this crew of aliens by herself at first until she's then confronted by the Star Hammer, this brand new character, right? And honestly, I shouldn't say that Jean Grey took on the entire group of aliens by herself, because you do have the rest of the X-Men come back in time to help protect her or fight against these other alien creatures who are also part of the Shi'ar Empire in different kind of ways. But when it comes to Jean Grey, she's the only one being confronted by the Star Hammer. Now, the Star Hammer is someone who's very upset with Jean Grey. Here is the reason why. Because this person's the last surviving member of the Debari race. Because remember, guys, in the opening pages of the storyline, we saw the Phoenix wipe out the entire planet. And the problem was that the Phoenix used the face of Jean Grey. So for a lot of people out there, they're kind of like, no, this person right here, Jean Grey, was the Phoenix, not really knowing that the Phoenix took the form of Jean Grey, and that's really it. And so for this last surviving member of Debari, she wants to kill off Jean Grey. Now, their minds are connected, and with their minds being connected, it allowed Jean Grey to kind of replay the whole entire thing in her mind, kind of giving her the ability to relive the entire moment right there. And so for Jean Grey, it's now her fully understanding what the Phoenix did in her name while she was, quote unquote, not dead, but in a coma, basically, I guess. And so for Jean Grey, it's kind of like, oh my God, the Dark Phoenix did that? That's horrible. And so when it comes to Jean Grey, she kind of feels a tad bit, well, responsible for what happened to the Debari planet, because it was the Phoenix. But it's her saying, like, if she did not cry out for help when it came to saving the X-Men in that Chris Claremont storyline, then most likely she would have never met the Phoenix. Their lives could be completely different. Now, it's also the book saying that for Jean Grey, she kind of feels like Scott Summers still alive, that Scott is out there somewhere and of course needs her help right now at this moment. And she does tell Cable that. And this kind of leads into the search for Scott Summers. The first few panels of this storyline is really showing us Everett Ross, who was liaison for T'Challa in Wakanda, right now floating in space. And we're kind of left to wonder, how in the world is this man right now just floating out there in space? Like, why in the world is he out there in the first place? And so while he's out there, we're also being reminded that in an earlier storyline, Killmonger had been officially killed off. And so with the death of Killmonger, that basically means T'Challa is now back in charge of Wakanda once again. Now, in the previous storyline, the biggest part of that storyline was the death of one particular character, and that would be no other than Nicole Adams. Now, Nicole Adams was this love interest for T'Challa in the early days of Marvel Comics, right? Now, again, in the early days, as time went on, the two did go their separate ways. But once she started working at the U.S. State Department, and where she began dating Everett Ross, she gave Ross the position of being liaison for T'Challa and Wakanda. But she hid one big fact from him, the idea that she had dated T'Challa in the past. And so once Ross had found out, it kind of led into a very huge argument where you had the two arguing, but then she was killed in the crossfire by Malice, who was trying to kill another character known as Monica Lynn. And so the whole entire storyline right now, it's really more of Everett Ross wanting to save the life of his now dead girlfriend, wanting to bring her back to life. And there is one way that could possibly bring her back to life, and that would be the idea of the resurrection altar in Wakanda. You see, there was this altar that was kind of built in Wakanda because a piece of a star fell onto Earth. Now, over the years in Marvel Comics, we have learned different stories about this altar kind of being used to resurrect people or give people extra powers as well. Now, this storyline is also kind of adding on to the idea that this altar is not just a regular altar to bring someone back to life. Most likely, it's a gateway to a different planet. But when it comes to Everett, what he wants to do is use the altar like Killmonger followers did to bring back his dead girlfriend. Now, with T'Challa, he reminds us that the gateway between the living and the dead has been closed off, which basically means the altar is not going to work the same way it used to in the past. And so it's him telling Everett, no, she's dead. Let her be gone, and live in peace. But for Everett, he blames himself for her death. And so it's him saying, no, I want to use this altar to bring her back to life. This leads right into the idea of maximum security, because out of nowhere, you have all these different aliens popping up left and right. Now, before they had appeared for T'Challa, he wanted to blow up the entire altar to prevent the idea of anyone else using the altar in some kind of negative way. And so now it's T'Challa and Everett trying their best to defend themselves against the aliens who are now on Earth. Because remember, because the whole idea of maximum security is based around the idea that you had these different people, different empires that came together, better known as the Intergalactic Council, had decided that humans are a huge problem in the universe. Because for the Avengers and other humans from Earth, they're always traveling to different planets across the universe, causing problems for other empires across the universe. And so you had the, again, Intergalactic Council say, let's go ahead and lock them away. Go ahead and lock the humans away on Earth, but also turn the Earth into a prison planet. And so that is why you have all these different aliens just popping up left and right as well, because again, they were put on trial and they're like, you're guilty. Go to Earth to live out your term. But anyways, as we get back over to T'Challa and also, well, Everett, we see Everett being able to place his girlfriend into the actual machine that should possibly bring her back to life. The thing is that the energy that was used in the altar does bring her back to life, but not in the way that he was hoping. It's not her soul. It's kind of like her body is being used right now by some kind of energy. Now, again, with the idea of the whole event of maximum security, you have all these different aliens just popping up left and right trying to get into the temple. And when they do, it's T'Challa right now trying his best to protect Everett. Now, for Everett's girlfriend, unfortunately, she's killed off once again by all the fighting going on in the temple. But while you have the two kind of going back and forth, when they get outside the temple, we kind of find out that this temple was a gateway to another temple across the universe. And so when it came to the idea of the Intergalactic Council, they want to make sure that there are no ways to get off Earth. And that temple was one of the ways that they had discovered that could allow prisoners to escape from Earth to somewhere else. And so right now for our heroes, they're now on this other planet away from Earth, thanks to the resurrection altar. Now, this kind of leads into an argument between Black Panther and also Everett. And the reason why, because of Everett, he had enough. Because for Black Panther, he keeps calling Everett his friend. But to Everett, T'Challa has not been a good friend, because it's the idea that they have gone through so many different things that Everett's life had been put in danger because of T'Challa being Black Panther, because T'Challa is the king of Wakanda. And so for Everett, he's kind of like, enough is enough. Like, I have gone through so much, and here we are now. Now my girlfriend is dead. But the thing is, she died the same day after telling me that about you two had a past with one another. And apparently you tried to sleep with her again. And so it's T'Challa kind of hearing this, but it's also Everett wondering, like, why in the world do you keep calling me your friend? And so you have T'Challa basically say, like, the reason why, because of Nikki. Because Nikki, I loved her, but she was now with you. And for me personally, I felt like the reason she chose you because she realized she had someone good in her life. That again was you. And so it's kind of like, dang, it's him saying, like, because of Nikki, because her love for Everett was the reason why T'Challa said, let's go ahead and be friends. And that is why. And so you have T'Challa and Everett being able to get back to Earth, right? Because apparently for T'Challa, he found a way back home just like that, right? But We have T'Challa go back home to Wakanda. Now, while being there, it's also him being told that he has a visitor, and that would be Storm. Now, this part right here does pick up where our last video for Maximum Security had left off at when it came to Uncanny X-Men, where you have Storm inform her team that she has to go because T'Challa is calling for her. And of course, that call leads over to this book right here, which then leads into a whole storyline for Black Panther and Storm that we may or may not cover down the road. With that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later. Now it's time for us to dive into Captain Marvel issue number 12. Now, for Captain Marvel, like these other tie-ins, they're kind of pointless when it comes to the whole idea of like the event Maximum Security. Now, at the same time, though, some of these tie-ins are pretty fun, right? But again, it's kind of like they don't really do anything when it comes to the overall storyline of Maximum Security. Now, for this Captain Marvel, it is the son of the original Captain Marvel, and that would be Genis Vell. Now, as we get into the opening pages of this storyline, we're also picking up with two characters, one making their first appearance, and the second one been around for a short period of time in Marvel Comics. The first one going to be is Una Rog, and I really hope I pronounce her name correctly. Now, for Una Rog, she's like many other aliens who were sent over to Earth to spend their time on Earth for committing crimes out there in the universe. Now, we see her, being confronted by some regular human who finds her attractive. In a way, she kind of gets her energy is feeding off other people. And so we see her kiss the guy and basically kill him off, but also like absorb his energy. But then she's also confronted by her brother, and that will be Zayrog. Now for Zayrog, again, he been around for a short period of time in Marvel Comics. Matter of fact, he is a rival to the current Captain Marvel here in the storyline. But now we switch over to Rick Jones. Now for Rick Jones, around this time in Marvel Comics, he was married to a character known as Marlo. Now for Marlo, she had her own comic book store, right? But unfortunately, the store was not doing that great. And so for Marlo, her main goal right now is to get Captain Marvel to come by and do an in-store appearance, kind of hoping that it would bring some customers back to her comic book store. Now, when it comes to Rick Jones around this time in Marvel Comics, he was also connected to this Captain Marvel like the original Captain Marvel. Let me explain. See, in Marvel Comics, there are a thing called the Negabands that are used by Rick Jones. And when it came to Rick Jones, with the Negabands, he's always usually connected to a Captain Marvel. You see, at first, the original Captain Marvel was in the negative zone. And so anytime, Earth needed a hero like Captain Marvel for Rick Jones, he would use the Negabands to switch spots with that Captain Marvel who was in the negative zone. Now, he died a long time ago, right? But for Rick Jones right now, he's now connected to the son of the original Captain Marvel. But this Captain Marvel right now is in the microverse. But anytime Earth needs a hero like Captain Marvel for Rick Jones, he would use Negabands to switch spots with the brand new Captain Marvel. And so right now it's his wife saying like, I'm gonna need you to bring homeboy here to help save my store, to bring some more customers back to my store. And for Captain Marvel, he's kind of like, yeah, I agree with that. I'll go ahead and do it because my goal right now is to gain the trust of Earth right now. But now we switch over to Zay and also Una Rog. Now for these two characters, they're walking around the city, right? But they see this news report where basically, it's the news saying right now all these different aliens are crashing on Earth left and right. But it does seem like it's very disorganized. And so for Una and also for Zay, what they want to do is organize the aliens, kind of take charge of everyone, be the leaders for all the aliens on Earth. Now, while they're walking around getting attacked by some humans and stuff like that, they find a flyer. That flyer on the cover, of course, has our good old boy, Captain Marvel. Now, for Zay, he hates this Captain Marvel. And the reason why, because his father, Zay's father, was killed off by this Captain Marvel's father, the original Captain Marvel. And so is Zay saying like, no, I want to kill off the son of a murderer. Let's go find him now and get him killed. Because for Zay, he did try before and failed, but this time kind of hoping he won't fail and actually complete the job. And so, of course, the rest of this issue is really more of us seeing Zay, confronting Captain Marvel at the comic book store, right? And so, when they do see one another, it does lead into a battle. We do get a few pages of the battle, right? But then at the very end of issue number 12, we see, Captain Marvel being easily distracted by Una. He's kind of like, dang, she was kind of cool, And so he goes over to her and she is about to kiss him. Now, like we saw earlier, when she kissed someone, she kills that person off. So it does seem like for Captain Marvel, he's on the verge of death right now because Homeboy is some kind of trance for this woman. And so as we get into the next chapter, it's really more of us seeing like Marlo freaking out because a whole fight took place inside her shop, right? So she's like, oh my God, what do I do? And so we see her like running over to where the fight's taking place right now. Now, when she does that, when she gets there, she does see Captain Marvel right now making out with Una. So she's kind of like, oh my God, what in the world is really going on here? Now, with this whole entire like fighting scene slash kissing scene happening for Rick Jones, kind of like, what in the world is happening back on Earth right now? Because he's in the microverse. But that kind of leads into his own like problem because while you do have in the microverse and freaking out, he actually hits someone of royalty in this microverse mall, right? And so you have the guards for this guy who's royalty call up mall security. They're kind of like, hey, our guy got hit by this man right here. Bring in security now and let's go ahead and take this boy away, right? But back on Earth, we get a good old regular battle, right, between Captain Marvel and also, well, Ray. Because you do have Marlo hit Uma in the head to stop her from kissing Captain Marvel. And then she kind of fights against Uma while you have Ray fighting against, well, Captain Marvel. Now, as both battles go on, you have Marlo being able to cut the leg of Una. Now, that part right there is really important. And here's the reason why. Because she's afraid of the idea of bloodhounds finding her. You see, in the Kree Empire, if you are born as a young girl, you gain the ability to control men, to twist their desires. Now, usually, when it came to young girls being born in the Kree Empire, they would then go through a procedure that would take away those abilities because in their empire, they want men more in charge. Now, when it came to Una, her father made sure that she did not go through that procedure. The thing was, while being unchecked, her powers grew, right? To the point where she had gained the ability to drain the life force from men. Now, that part right there is pretty rare. Apparently, only happens like every 100 years for one woman in the entire empire. And so for Una, the reason why she's freaking out because, well, Marlo did cut her. So her blood right now on the ground. But there's bloodhounds out there who are tasked to find women who somehow got out of the empire and somehow got past the whole idea of that procedure that was supposed to be done when they were born in the first place. And so for Una, she's kind of like, the bloodhounds are going to find me and take me away and then make me go through the procedure to lose my powers. So it's her right now asking for Marlo's help. And you had a storyline kind of get wrapped up very quickly here because, okay, so for Rick Jones, he went through trial for the whole idea of hitting that guy who's royalty, right? And they're kind of like, yeah, you know what? He gotta die. So their plan is to send him out in the microverse to, I guess, defend for himself. And so he cries out to Captain Marvel, who's still fighting against Zay. And so what he does is you have Captain Marvel and Rick Jones switch spots. So Captain Marvel does go back to the microverse, but he also pulls Zay with him as well. Now, when it comes to Marlo and also Una, well, for Marlo, she wants to help out Una, but for Rick Jones, he already knows, like, they do not stand a chance against the Bloodhounds of the Kree Empire. So he grabs Marlo, and you have the Bloodhounds grab Una, and they fly away. And that is literally the end of this storyline. And so with that bit into the opening pages of the storyline, we pick up with a character known as Hack. Now for Hack, he's not really a major character in Marvel Comics. Matter of fact, like he only appeared 3 times in Marvel Comics. But when it comes to Hack, he had made a deal with Bruce Banner in the past, right? And so with the deal he made with Bruce Banner, it's really more of now Joe Fixit coming to Hack for another favor. But Hack says like, no, dude, listen. I will not help you until you help me out because I did a favor for Bruce Banner. Now, for Joe Fixit, it's the idea that Bruce and him are two separate people, but because to most people out there, Joe Fixit and also Bruce share the same body, they're basically the same person. And so it's Hack saying, nah, dog, like, you're going to help me out. And for Joe Fixit, he tries to play the whole fear game, right? Like, try to scare Hack. And Hack's all like, you can try to scare me, but I'm not backing down. You owe me a favor, dude. But while you have Joe Fixit helping out Hack as they head over to a certain location, they don't realize that there are two people right now who are currently watching them, better known as 1 and 2. Literally, that's their name, and they only appear in the storyline, and that's really it. But they're being watched by these two guys, right? Now, when it came to maximum security, just in case anybody's just randomly jumping into one of our tie-in videos, the idea of that event was that you had the Intergalactic Council say, humans have caused too much damage across the universe. So let's go ahead and lock them away on Earth so that they can no longer get involved in other planet stuff. But also, let's turn Earth into a prison planet. So technically now, any aliens, any criminal aliens out there in the universe who does some kind of crime will be sent over to Earth to live their term out there on the prison planet. And so it's kind of like, okay, you had a storyline somewhat playing around with that idea, but not really. But for 1 and 2, they feel like Hack and also Joe Fixit are being called away by another person. Now, when it comes to Hack, he's a guy who believes in like all these different kinds of conspiracies, right? The idea that when babies are born, there's a microchip placed in babies to follow them as they grow in the world, and they might travel around the world for the American government. They're always watching those babies. That kind of conspiracy, right? Now, when it comes to Hack, he believes that inside the actual with the idea of maximum security happening right now, there's aliens popping up left and right. So for the American government, they can't watch every single government facility at the moment. And so for Hack, he knows in this one right here, there's this huge conspiracy right now, what's inside there. That a million years ago, you had some aliens arrive on Earth and they planted some seeds on Earth to kind of cause some kind of hybridization to happen on Earth. And so he believes there's some kind of sample of the aliens' work inside that facility. So the Hulk's goal right now is to go in there, fight through all different kinds of security, and get his hand on that sample of the hybridization that was done millions of years ago by some aliens. And so you have Joe Fixit say, fine, you know what? I'll go ahead and do this for you, but the whole entire storyline is wild. And so Joe goes in there. But now again, once you have the Hulk trying his best to get inside, he still doesn't realize that he's being watched right now by 1 and 2. And so 1 and 2 has taken over the mind of the person in charge of this whole entire facility. And so with them doing that, it allows the Hulk to go deeper and deeper into the actual building. But I also want to see, like, is it true? Is the Hulk right now being called by, once again, this other being that these two guys are concerned about? And so what happens now, it's really more of us seeing the Hulk just fighting his way literally into the building. Like, all these different kind of weapons are popping up left and right. But while you have the Hulk doing that, you didn't have like different soldiers who work at the facility kind of wondering like, hey, you know, the colonel, the guy in charge, he was watching the cameras. Why are we not on red alert right now? Because this other person, this intruder, better known as Joe Fixit right now, is getting closer and closer into like one of our top secret rooms. We should probably go to red alert. And so you didn't have like all these different tanks and like choppers appear to hopefully bring the Hulk down once he does come back outside. Now for 1 and 2, they're still watching. They're still watching like the whole entire thing. They kind of realize the other person is here. their enemy, and that would be someone known as the Ancient. And matter of fact, I should say the Ancients. And the reason why, because the alien race with the name Ancients. But the thing is, once you do have the Hulk being able to get his hands on the container that's holding on to the sample work that was done millions of years ago by the aliens who arrived on Earth, you didn't have one of the Ancients appear. And they're kind of like, hey, Joe Fixit, go ahead and hand me that sample. So, of course, this is the alien, right? We also see that 1 and 2 are also aliens as well, and they begin to fight against the Ancients. Now, as the battle goes on, you literally have Joe say, I'm out of here. He grabs the container and just disappears. And so once you have both parties realize that Joe Fix is gone right now, they're like, hey, where in the world did that human go to? And they both realize that neither of the two were trying to force the Hulk to get their hands on that sample. But either way, Joe Fixit got away with the sample. And we kind of find out the sample, literally the sample, is just some corn. Like some hybrid corn that was done or made millions of years ago by the aliens when they had arrived on Earth. That's really it. And the book does end on that note. That's why I say, like, this could be a short video or a decent sized video, but either way, y'all gonna hate the storyline because it's so stupid. It's like, wait, why in the world, would you make this a tie-in to Maximum Security? Because the thing is, like, yes, there are aliens in the storyline, but none of this is really being affected by the idea of maximum security. The only part that is being affected by the event is that for the American government, their hands are tied right now with everything popping up left and right across the nation, so they can't watch every single facility they have in the nation. But still, this storyline does nothing for the event at all. So yeah, guys. But let's go ahead and do the Iron Man tie-in for this storyline, right? And so when it came to Iron Man, we already covered the first 2 issues of the storyline, but it took place prior to the first issue of Maximum Security, the main storyline. And so in those first 2 issues, we had saw Iron Man meet a new character known as Max Power. Now for Power, he's not really important anymore in the storyline, but it's the idea that for Power, he was a new character that kind of told people like, hey, I have the ability to give you the chance to have powers for at least 1 hour. You see, he would throw these different kind of parties for rich people, and they would pay a lot of money to attend these parties. Now, he would tell folks like, hey, the money you spent is going to be used for like different projects, different charity events, but in reality, helping him to kind of make this drug. Now, at the end of that storyline, you had Iron Man being able to bring him down. This leads into the final chapter, but also it picks up after the first issue of Maximum Security. Now, there's one particular issue is also being used to kind of explain the backstory to Max Power. So kind of like wrapping up his storyline in Iron Man comics. But in the opening page, we see that someone else had arrived on Earth, but we don't know who this person could possibly well be. But you did have the story kind of shift back over to like the origin of Max Power. And like I said earlier, for Max Power, he's not really an important character at all when it comes to Iron Man comics. And matter of fact, out of this story arc, you will not care for his character at all anymore. But the idea of Max Power is that he was an alien, right? Who was exiled from his home world. And the reason why, because he did something horrible, the worst kind of black arts, and that would be science. Like literally, that is it. Because he was doing science on his home world, he was exiled, came over to Earth, but then learned about superheroes of Earth. And that kind of led the idea of him trying to create a drug that would give people powers for at least 1 hour. By collecting different samples of different superheroes and supervillains, he was then able to produce a new drug to get the people out there to have the chance to have powers for at least 1 hour. Now, again, only like rich people, but still, he was able to build his own wealth in that kind of process. That's his whole entire origin. And then we move on. But this kind of leads us back over to the present day. Now, when it comes to the present day, is how we had learned about the origin of Max Power through Iron Man. You see, in the first two chapters of the storyline, again, the first two tie-ins, you had Iron Man fight against Max Power, right? But the thing was, Max Power took different versions of his drugs to give him different kinds of abilities. Now, with him doing that, he fought against Iron Man. But Iron Man realized that if he threw more different kind of drugs on Max Power, it would give him different kind of abilities, but also like overload his mind. And so one of those powers was telepathy. And so once he had that ability, Iron Man's mind and Max Power mind had connected. And so you had Iron Man being able to, learn about the origin of Max Power. But this leads us perfectly into the storyline of Maximum Security. See, in the first issue, we had learned that Ego the planet was like compressed down to a smaller size and sent over to Earth to be on his prison planet. But the thing is, with this spore-like version of Ego the planet on Earth right now, is slowly merging with the Earth, technically regrowing Ego, but as it grows, it's absorbing the Earth in it. And so you have the heroes of Earth right now trying their best to locate Ego the planet. Now, when it comes to Reed Richards, kind of realize that Max Power may have some kind of contact with the spore. And so if Iron Man, whose mind was connected to Max Power, could possibly try to look into the memories that he had gained from Max Power to kind of help locate where the spore Ego could be yet. And just like that, you have Iron Man being able to locate where the spore Ego is currently at. Because we saw at the end of our last chapter of Iron Man tie-ins, but also for Maximum Security, that when it came to the idea of the spore, it was being taken care of by this really weird couple who look at Ego Spore as a baby. So this kind of leads into a very, not a quick ending, but like, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and wrap up this storyline and build our way up to the second chapter for the main storyline of Maximum Security. And the reason why I'm saying that, because when it comes to Iron Man and the Fantastic Four, when they do arrive in that town, at first everything looks normal. You got people, you got buildings, like everything seems normal, right? That's not the case, because once you do have our hero going to walk around, they realize that every single person in this town, except for two people, and also most of the town has already been absorbed by Ego the planet. And so with that happening, that means that everyone's already dead. It's him right now pulling this charade to have our heroes believe at first that everything is normal. But in reality, it's not. Everything is falling apart here. And so you have our heroes being attacked by this building or these people who are now part of Ego the planet. Now for Iron Man, he does find the couple that was taking care of Ego the spore, right? And so once you do have Iron Man inject something in the Ego spore, it freaks out and disappears. But the whole entire town goes with it. But this leads into the ending, where you really have Reed Richards kind of say like, okay, cool. So Ego disappeared, but you did kind of give us some time when you did inject some kind of chemical that slowed down Ego's process of absorbing the Earth. But sooner or later, he's going to reappear on a different part of the Earth. But Reed feels like he has a way to compress Ego once again and hopefully get him off the Earth. The problem is that he's a massive energy source and he needs something like cosmic-like. But luckily for our heroes, that kind of energy does appear, or that kind of person does appear in time to give them that cosmic energy. And of course, that would be the Silver Surfer. Okay, so like we are going to continue our coverage over the X-Men, but at the same time, we're also continuing our coverage over Maximum Security as well. And so with that being said, I kind of want to make sure I like go back over the idea of Maximum Security, because just in case anybody out there finds this random Bishop video is kind of like, cool, somebody had actually covered Bishop on YouTube, but then kind of like, wait, what in the world is maximum security? I want to make sure you guys fully understand the whole idea of that event because it was pretty important going into the early 2000s for Marvel Comics. You see, when it came to maximum security, it was this storyline where, okay, so you had a thing called the Intergalactic Council. The Intergalactic Council was made of the different empires across the universe who had came together and they kind of decided how to handle different things happening across the universe. And one of those things was, well, the human race. You see, over the years, you had different heroes like the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and the list goes on and on, would go to different worlds and kind of cause some problems on those different worlds. And so after a few years had passed by, you had the council say enough is enough. The humans must be handled. And so what they did was they turned the Earth into an actual prison planet, saying like all the humans right now got to stay on Earth. They are not allowed to leave at all. But on top of that, any kind of aliens out there do some kind of crime, they'll be sent over to Earth to do their time on Earth on the prison planet. And so that was the whole idea of maximum security. Now, when it came to Bishop, his tie-in does pick up from an earlier time we did Uncanny X-Men issue number 387. Before we can officially talk about that one particular issue, I kind of want to shift our focus back over to Charles Xavier. Here's the reason why, because you had Charles Xavier after the events of Apocalypse of 12. He left the X-Men once again, but this time for a completely different reason. You see, when it came to Charles Xavier and the X-Men, they had discovered that in the Skrull Empire, there are mutants in the Skrull Empire as well. Skrulls who are born with abilities, but usually they're killed off right after childbirth or used as weapons in war. And so you had Charles kind of take a small group of Skrulls mutants go across the universe to free other Skrulls who are mutants like the ones with him right now. And that kind of led into the idea of the maximum security event. Because with him going around and doing different things in the Skrull Empire, the Skrull Empire leaders were kind of like, hey, once again, we have some human who's coming out of Earth and is messing up things left and right in our own empire. And that part right there is not okay. And so with Charles, he kind of was the last straw that said, you know what, the council must step in and handle humans on Earth. Now, in Uncanny X-Men issue number 387, when it came to Leandra, his space girlfriend, but also the leader to the Shi'ar Empire, she told Charles that you have to find my sister Deathbird. And that leads over to Bishop. There's so much backstory here before we are able to officially dive into this one singular issue as a tie-in for the main event. Because for Bishop, he has been lost in time for a good while when it came to our coverage over the X-Men, especially when it came to Apocalypse the 12, because he was pulled back to the present day for that event for a brief moment. And then once you had that event wrap up, he disappeared once again back in the time stream. Now, he had all these different kinds of adventures, but the thing was, by this point in his own series, the series was slowly coming to its end. And so it was time for Marvel to say, let's go ahead and grab Bishop and bring him back over to the present day in the main Marvel universe with this one particular issue. But now we are able to officially dive into this storyline. Now, mind you, there's not a lot of story here, but still, it's a storyline we should cover because it's now bringing Bishop back into the fold again, but also his last issue is part of a small little X-Men crossover called Dreams End, I want to say. But anyways, when it comes to Charles Xavier and his Cadre K, his group of Skrull mutants, they do arrive at a Shi'ar outpost out in the middle of the universe. Now, when they do arrive, they find the entire crew has been killed off. And most likely already know that they were all killed off by no other than Deathbird. While you have Charles and his crew arrive there, we also see somebody else arriving already. We already know it is Bishop. It's him being pulled back into the present day in the main Marvel universe. But the question is now, what pulled them back over here? As a matter of fact, you have Charles being able to answer that question for us later on. But for Bishop, when he does arrive on the space station, when he wakes up, he's confronted by Death Bird, who's right on the run right now from the Shi'ar Empire, and Charles is trying his best to hunt her down for a particular item. Now, when it comes to Bishop, he does not really remember everything that happened to him in this series. Like, with him coming back over to the main Marvel universe, he does not remember his adventures in all different points in time, right? But while you have Deathbird trying her best to take him away, and by the way, for Deathbird, she is in love with Bishop, but at the same time, we have learned back in Apocalypse 12 that Apocalypse had assigned her to kind of work her way close to Bishop to bring Bishop over to him for his master plan in that storyline, where of course it did not work out for the guy. But anyways, when he came to Deathbird, she still has some kind of weird feelings for Bishop. But while you have tried to get him away, you then have her be confronted by Charles Xavier and his cadre K. Now, she learns here that for Charles, he was not sent here by her sister to investigate or to arrest her, that he only came here for the key. And so with him wanting that key, is now her saying, that key is mine. Why in the world would I go out of my way to give you what belongs to me? And so you do have her try her best to like shoot down Charles and Cadre K, but of course she does not do a good job at that, but she does get away, but leaving Bishop behind. Now, like I said earlier, the idea of like Bishop being pulled back into this point in time. Well, when it came to Bishop, he was lost in time for his entire series, but only came back to the main Marvel Universe twice in his entire series. Once for Apocalypse 12, and right now this point. And so for Bishop, he does not remember being pulled back in time to the whole event of Apocalypse 12. But Charles does tell us that both times of him being pulled back into the main Marvel universe is because of Deathbird. Like she's some kind of anchor for him that's able to pull him back into this period of time in Marvel Comics. But it's also Charles going into his mind, kind of give him a small refresher of everything that he had went through in this whole entire series. But once you do the two, them kind of had a small conversation, it's now them saying, let's work together to go after Deathbird to get that dang key. Really, the rest of this storyline is really more of us just seeing, Bishop confronting Deathbird on his own. Now, first it was him and Charles Xavier, right? But you didn't have Charles get hit in the armor suit. And really for Charles, he's only able to walk because of the armor suit. So once his suit does get hit by one of Deathbird's like blasts, whatever, his suit shuts down. He's no longer able to walk. And so it comes down to Bishop. Now, I'm not going to sit here and like drag out the rest of this ending for you guys, but it's the idea that you can tell that Bishop did have gained feelings for Deathbird, but the idea of who she is, a murderer, and him being an X-Men, he has to bring her in. And so he does try to, but she does open up an airlock and she just gets sucked into space. But of course, you have Bishop being able to close the airlock. And what we see the book end on the note where is him now holding on to this key. Now, this key will give Bishop and Charles the ability to kind of go back to Earth. Really, it's more Charles saying like, I need someone down on Earth to help the X-Men, to help the heroes free the Earth so they'll no longer be this prison planet anymore. And so for Bishop, he'll become that agent for Charles Xavier. And that's literally the whole entire ending to the storyline. And so with that being said, guys, now before we officially like sit down and talk about the idea of Ego the Planet, I do want to kind of go over a quick page that will lead into another video going to cover right after this one right here. And that will be us heading over to the SHIELD base on the moon. Now they're in the blue area of the moon, but apparently out of nowhere, we have a few members of the Thunderbolts right now just running through the SHIELD base. And we're kind of left to wonder, why in the world are they doing that for? Now, again, this leads into some tie-ins we'll cover in a different video for the Thunderbolts. But now we can officially sit down and talk about the idea of Ego the Planet. Because in the earlier storylines that we had covered for this event, we had talked about the idea of Ego the Planet, who was just going on a rampage across the entire universe. And so once you had him be defeated, it seemed like they were able to turn him into a spore and gave over to a host to bring over to Earth, because they felt like Ego should go over to Earth, be part of the whole prison planet system. The problem was that once you had Ego leave that host behind and officially began to merge with Earth, you didn't have our heroes realize that sooner or later the Earth will be completely consumed by Ego the Planet. Once that's done right there, everything is over for the Earth. Now, in the earlier tie-ins for Iron Man, you had our heroes being able to slow down the process, but not completely stop the process. And so right now, I'm trying to find a new host for Ego the Planet to hopefully get him off the Earth. And right now, the only person who may be powerful enough to take on Ego as a host will be the Silver Surfer. But like I said earlier, this issue is really more of us kind of seeing like everyone freaking out. And honestly, they have the right to freak out because now you have all these different aliens popping up left and right. But with that happening, it means all these different heroes out there are trying their best to handle the situation. So like different members of the Avengers, Black Panther, Captain Marvel. You even have the X-Men right now also dealing with things in New Orleans. So it's kind of showing like, hey, the Earth right now is just freaking out left and right. Now, we also remember that when it came to this storyline, you had US Agent be the first one to kind of figure out what was happening. And for his character, he was working for the Commission of the Superhuman Activity Organization, right? And so they say, hey, you are in charge of like trying to bring this down, right? But the thing is, he felt like he's in charge of everyone. So when it came to the Avengers, who don't work for the American government at all, he kind of felt like he should take over as their leader because they're too, as he says, yellow. They're not really able to cross the lines they need to cross to handle the situation. But it's the Wasp right now to be like, hey, dude, you need to calm down because right now we have all these different heroes out there on deck trying their best to handle this kind of situation. Now, for our heroes, they do get some kind of help. That help comes from Beta Ray Bill. You see, in a Thor tie-in that we had covered a while ago, we saw Beta Ray Bill being able to arrive on Earth. Now, technically, he was forced on Earth because he was confronted by the Intergalactic Council Patrol, basically police officers, who found him. And they're going around right now collecting any humans who are out there in the universe, but also going after anybody who may be labeled as a human lover. And so for Beta Ray Bill, unfortunately, he has that label. Now, let's go ahead and switch back over to US Agent because homeboy, the entire time you have everyone kind of talking about what to do, he gets very upset. And the reason why, because of his character, he kind of feels like they should just go ahead and go right back after Ronan the Accuser once again, because it's that character right there who's right now making sure that everyone stays on Earth. Like, hey, once you arrive, you can't leave at all. You are completely trapped. And so for US Agent, he's all like, no, let's go ahead, go after Ronan the Accuser, bring him down, free the Earth. Like, that's our game plan right now. But as Wasp saying, dude, we can't do that because the last time we tried to go up there, he shot us out of the sky, teleported us on his spaceship, told us what's happening, and then sent us right back down to Earth. If we even try to go back up there, there's a huge possibility we might get shot out of the sky. We need more manpower as well. That last part right there, it's really important. And the reason why, because you have, good old US agent like, fine, if we want manpower, I'll get you some manpower. And so he leaves to find some different people to hopefully help out with this idea of more manpower to bring down Roland the Accuser. But for Hank Pym, it's also him saying like, hey, I'm trying my best to work on some kind of cloaking system to protect us if we do try to go after Ronan the Accuser. Now, while he's trying to do that right there, he's also trying to find a way to get through the barrier to call out for help out there in the universe. But you didn't have Jarvis like, hey, I just heard from Quasar and he used the quantum link to contact us. You can possibly use that as a way to contact him and maybe other people as well. Because when it came to the Thor tie-in, we had also learned that there are some heroes who are just out there in the universe, right? Like Captain Marvel, Quasar, Thor, they're out there. And so the idea of them not knowing what's going on makes a lot of sense because they're not on Earth. And so once you have the Wasp called Quasar, he's all like, so that's what's happening. All right, cool, bet. Like, we'll be out here trying to protect ourselves and try to find a way to help you guys as well. But I want to go ahead and switch over to Charles Xavier. Here's the reason why. Because Homeboy did play a small part in the whole idea of this event, and let me explain. Because for Charles Xavier, him and the X-Men had discovered that there were mutants in the Skrull race, right? And so in the Skrull Empire, if you are a mutant, you are one, killed off at childbirth, or two, you are used as a weapon in wars. And so when it came to Charles Xavier's all like, that's not cool, that's not fair. I'm gonna go on my way to help out these mutant Skrulls and free themselves in the Skrull Empire. Hopefully change things for them. Now, that part right there is really important because when it came to the Intergalactic Council, they were like, hey, humans are a problem. We got to put humans away. And the last thing humans did was Charles Xavier attacking one of the Skrull empires, like buildings or whatever, to free more Skrull mutants. And so because of that, it's kind of like, dang, Charles, you kind of have a small hand into what is happening right now. But it's him right now on the world that belongs to the Intergalactic Council where they meet up at. But his main goal is to meet up with Lilandra, his space girlfriend. But while trying to do that, him and his whole entire group of Skrull mutants get knocked out. But before he does get completely knocked out, we see Charles somewhat smiling. But getting back over to US Agent, right? The idea of him trying to find some more manpower, quotation marks right there. We see him, telling his people, the Commission of Superhuman Activity agents out there, to try to recruit different aliens. Here's the problem. For some aliens, they love the idea of being on Earth. The reason why, because Earth is a better place than where they came from. And for some aliens, it's more the idea like they're pacifists. They hate the idea of fighting. And some don't even speak English or any other kind of earthly language. And so they're having a hard time communicating with these aliens. And so it's kind of like, okay, I'm not really being able to get the manpower we need to hopefully end this whole entire event happening on the Earth at the moment. But to make matters even worse, when we do switch back over to Reed Richards and also Iron Man as well, we see them currently freaking out. And they have a good reason why to, because right now, Ego the Planet has woken up. And when waking up right now, he's now again continuing that process of consuming the Earth. But it's also him eating or feeding off the shield that was containing him that Reed Richards had made. And so with that being out of the way right now, that means there's nothing really able to stop him, or at least slow him down long enough for our heroes to win. And so for Reed, he has been trying to work on some device that will make Silver Surfer become this host for Ego the Planet to get him off the Earth. The problem is that they have now lost some of the tech thanks to Ego waking up and eating things left and right. And so it's Reed saying, hey, Silver Surfer, the whole entire machine, the process, everything, it's not perfect yet. I want to make sure it is to keep you alive. But Silver Surfer, he's all like, we don't got a choice here. Like sooner or later, the Earth is going to die. And I have seen many planets across the universe be destroyed. And I would hate the idea of this world being destroyed as well. So it's him saying, let's go ahead and take the risk because right now we don't have a choice here. Like, look at Ego the planet. But this leads us over to the ending of today's storyline. We do switch over to US Agent. And here's the reason why. Because he's still out there trying his best to find some more manpower. They heard an encampment nearby for some aliens, right? But while getting there to a supposed location, he sees this tower being built just out of nowhere. He's like, wait, that's weird. Because if we are now a prison planet, how in the world are these aliens being transported over to Earth with some construction gear? But on top of that, all the materials they have right now are most definitely not from Earth. Their aircrafts are most definitely not from Earth. And so he hides to observe. And we kind of find out that these aliens belong to the Rule race. Now, let's not forget, the Rule race was a brand new concept given to us in the early parts of the main storyline, right? And he heard of the Rule from Beta Ray Bill. And so while watching them, they construct some kind of tower. But then he realized the Rule race is not an actual race, it's the Kree. And the reason why, because they're using the Omni Wave to communicate with other groups out there. And when it comes to the Omni Wave, only one particular race uses that. And that is the Kree, which means the Kree are right now pretending to be this brand new race known as the Rule. Now, with that being said, that moon base on the moon, right? We see it getting under attack. Here's the reason why, because we're now seeing a bunch of Rules, or now Kree, attacking the base, but going out of their way to free one particular being. And that would be the Intelligence Supreme. And so all this whole entire planning going on behind the scenes was being done by the Kree Empire. We don't know officially why just yet, but most likely one, to get their leader back, the Intelligence Supreme, but to also hopefully bring back the Kree Empire. Okay, so let's go ahead and get back into our coverage over the Thunderbolts, but also continue our coverage over maximum security as well. Because for Thunderbolts, they did have a few tie-ins to this event, really 3 issues, and all 3 issues do take place right after the second chapter of the main storyline. So it kind of works out for us because we were catching up on our different videos for the Thunderbolts and also doing our videos for maximum security. So everything kind of worked out for us in the end, right? But anyways, getting back into our coverage over the Thunderbolts, it's really more of us kind of learning the origin to the powers of Moonstone. And that right there is really important because for the last few storylines, we see that she's been having these personality battles going on in her mind where there is this other person who's currently talking to her. Now, before we're able to officially sit down and talk about the idea of, Moonstone, I want to shift over to Ogre. Now, guys, remember, this is not Ogre. This is Techno, who's right now pretending to be Ogre. Now, Techno first appeared on the team in the early days of the series, where you had the team being led by Baron Zemo. Back then was Baron Zemo's main goal was to, have a group of villains pretend to be heroes to get some master plan of his, right? But then over time, you had different people on the team begin to enjoy the idea of being heroes and want to stay as heroes. Now, for Baron Zemo and Techno, that was not the case. Now, for Techno, he was human, but then later on, his mind was transferred into a robotic body. But recently, he was able to sneak into the base of the Thunderbolts. Ooh, had a hard time saying that. But you had him being able to sneak into the base of the Thunderbolts, but also replace a character known as Ogre. Now, when it came to Ogre, he was this IT guy for the team. He was in the base, helping them out. That was it, really. But once you had Techno sneak inside the base, he knocked out Ogre and began to pretend to be Ogre. So for the rest of the team, they have no idea that Ogre is not really Ogre. Instead, it's, Techno. Now, in our last video, Techno was attacked by another character known as Scourge. Now, we still have no idea who Scourge is, but Scourge has supposedly killed off Baron Zemo, but now it seems like his main goal is to kill off the Thunderbolts, starting off with Techno. Now, he was attacked by Scourge, but then Scourge disappeared after cutting off the arm of Techno, and then he just disappeared, right? And so for Techno, he's been wondering, like, where in the world could Scourge be at? But the thing is, days have passed by now, and their main goal for the whole entire team is to locate Moonstone. But the thing is, for Techno, he has no idea that Scourge is right now hiding inside his body. He's shrunk down and now hiding inside the body of Techno. But you also have Techno inform everyone that right now for Moonstone, she's on the moon, the shield base on the moon. That's why when it came to our second chapter, or the video for the second chapter of the main storyline for Maximum Security, we saw a small glimpse of like the team on the shield base on the moon, leaving us wondering why. This is why, because they realize that Moonstone right now is on the shield base on the moon. But you also have Techno inform the team that that base is currently holding on to one prisoner. That prisoner is no other than the Supreme Intelligence. And that part right there is very important for the main storyline, but also for the origin of Moonstone as well. But you do have our heroes say, hey, let's get up there. So you have Techno reveal some kind of, spacecraft that will give the team the ability to get on the moon and to hopefully find Moonstone. As a matter of fact, while you have the team trying to make their way over to the shield base, we see Moonstone right now just fighting her way over to the Supreme Intelligence. And so once she's able to get to him, you then have him call her the daughter of the Kree. And so it's kind of like, wait, what in the world do you mean by that? The daughter of the Kree. But of course, we got to pause and kind of see some other things going on that we build up for a later storyline. And really, it's just one single page, right? But this one page is two different interludes. The first one, it's really more about the idea of Andrea Sturman right now just still trying to gather more information about Omega 32, this special project going on right now in the series, and we still have no idea what is Omega 32. The second interlude, it's really more us seeing someone waking out of the coma after 5 years, leaving us wondering who in the world it could possibly be. But I want to go ahead and shift over to the idea of Moonstone. Here's the reason why, because we're now beginning to understand the origin of her powers. And it all began with the Big Bang. You see, once the Big Bang happened, right, got the whole entire universe, hippie-ki-yay, you had 8 stones that had survived the Big Bang. But each stone was found by a different race across the universe. So like the Shi'ar Empire, the Skrulls, the Kree, the Badoon. Now the other 4, we don't know who has those 4. But the thing was, there was peace because of these 8 stones. Their main goal was to give each stone over to one particular person from each alien race. And those 8 people were supposed to create the Guardians of the Galaxy. And you had peace for 200 Earth years. So that was kind of cool, right? But here's the thing though, because most of the stones are on Earth actually, for real. For example, you have the Godstone with John Jameson III that turns them over into, Man-Wolf. You have the Alpha Stone, Omega Stone, Moonstone, Blood Gem, all these different stones, right? But for Moonstone, she has the Moonstone that came from the Kree Empire. Now, with all that being said, it's also her, beginning to hear these voices in her head. And so what you have the Supreme Intelligence tell her I know why. And the reason why, because you are now, kind of communicating with the spirit of our guardian of the Kree Empire when we chose 200 years ago. And that would be a character known as, and I know I'm going to butcher her name, but it's basically a name known as Ajesha. And it kind of seems like because Moonstone's currently holding on to the Moonstone, the spirit of Ajesha is now being able to communicate with Moonstone. But you didn't have Moonstone be attacked by, well, the Thunderbolts. And so while they're attacking her, it's really more them kind of like thinking that she's gone crazy, she's gone wild, because you attacked a shield base. We see you having a full-on conversation with the Supreme Intelligence. Like, what in the world is going on with you, Moonstone? But you didn't have Hawkeye being able to stop her from attacking the friends and be like, hey, we're here to help you. So, like, please tell us what in the world is currently going on with you. And it's her saying, like, I need more information about the idea of the Moonstone. But then you have everyone being confronted by Captain Marvel, who he believes that he has the ability to kind of help her understand more about the Moonstone. But now we got to switch over to Techno back on Earth, right? Because you have Hank Pym call up Techno and kind of see how Atlas is doing. Because this storyline right now is reminding us of the storyline we had just covered, better known as the Avengers, Thunderbolts, Nefaria Protocol storyline, a 7-part storyline. Now, thanks to Wonder Man and also Atlas, they were truly affected by what happened in that storyline. And so it's the two of them right now trying to recover. Now, it's Hank Pym saying that Wonder Man should be A-okay because Wonder Man, he has been around ion energy for so long that his body's kind of used the idea of ion energy. But for Atlas, who had been powered up by ion energy in the past, he has not really been involved that much with ion energy. So it does seem like his recovery is going to be a tad bit different and a whole lot slower. But while you do have Techno hang up the call with Hank Pym, we then see Scourge just pop out the body of Techno, leaving us wondering the possibility that he is about to officially die. So as we get into this chapter, we kind of see as we get into this chapter, we see Techno on the ground right now in his own version of like bleeding out on the ground because he's not really able to transfer his mind over to another computer or some machine in the room to stay alive. Instead, what we're seeing now, it's really more him trying to use his speech patterns with another computer nearby to talk to Scourge, to figure out like, why in the world is he doing this for? Now, we kind of learn here that Scourge, he was kind of told to by his superiors. But it's also him telling Techno, like, hey, bro, I killed off Baron Zemo, one, and my people had cleared out all the technology that you had left behind in that building, which means that we know everything about you and everyone else. And we also learned that he was the one who had killed off Jolt. Now we see that Jolt is currently in this tube right now, one of the 3 tubes that Techno had. And so it's Techno asking Scourge, okay, you're going to kill me off, the rest of my team, but why not kill her off again? He said, because I already killed her. Like, someone has to tell me to kill her again. And since no one is right now, I guess she gets to live a new life once she comes out her tube. And he has Scourge kind of move on. Now, he wants to kill off Atlas, but it's the idea that Atlas might blow himself up. Now, they do switch back over to Moonstone and also the Thunderbolts. We see that currently they went over to Titan. Now, for Titan, that is the home to some of the Eternals, but also one of the moons of Saturn. Now, for our heroes, they went to pay a visit over to Mentor and also to Isaac. Now, for Isaac, he's really more important here because for Isaac, he is a computer system that runs everything about Titan, right? But it's also Isaac saying, like, I know a lot about the universe, especially when it comes to the stones, one of the stones that Moonstone has. Because for Hawkeye and Moonstone, I want to know, how did so many different people gain the powers from these stones? Because a lot of these stones did crash on Earth. And so you have Isaac say what had happened to the 8 chosen people who had became the guardians of the galaxy. He tells us that 4 of them died in battle. 2 of them, well, they retired. Well, that's all right, they died from old age. And 1 just retired. And the last one, the 8th one, we don't know what happened to that person because you have Moonstone kind of cut off Isaac. But it's also want to know again, how did all 8 stones land on Earth? And so what you have Isaac say is that all 8 stones being held by one person after you have the guardians disappear. Now, once the guardians had disappeared, the peace between all different empires had also went away as well. And so with that happening, all 8 stones being held by one person. And when they try to take the stones away from that one person, different pieces of the 8 stones fell on Earth. And that explains how, like, Moonstone got her powers, or someone else on Earth had gained their power from Stone as well, because small pieces of each of the 8 stones had crashed on Earth. Now, we're also kind of given a few more interludes as well, like, for example, the idea of Dallas Riordan. Now, real quick, guys, I had someone say, like, you never say her last name. Why? Because I don't really want to sometimes. That's all it is. But when it comes to Dallas Riordan, remember, guys, she is Citizen V. And we last saw her, she fought against Crimson Cow, and she did fell off a bridge. And she somehow ended up in Latveria. And so we currently see her being held as a prisoner, it seems. Not a prisoner because she's getting some medical help, but she can't move. Like, she's literally locked in this hospital bed. But we also do switch over to another hospital, and we pick up in London. Now, guys, in the last chapter, we saw someone who had just woken up from a coma after being in coma for 5 years. We kind of find out that this person was part of the V Battalion, and he's being met right now by 2 of the council members of the organization. And it does seem like he wants to go ahead and get back to his role. And his role, it seems like, was Citizen V in the past. But now we switch over to Andrea. And for Andrea, it's really more her right now, like, still investigating what's going on in Roxxon, but also with Omega 32, because she already knows some kind of project. She already knows someone was trying to look into the project, but that person got killed off, right? And she knows how that person got killed off, with hard air. But it's also her wanting to know, like, okay, who did it? Because she already knows there's some kind of connection between Roxxon and also the Commission and Superhuman Activity. And the thing is, she's right now meeting up with an FBI agent, better known as Vernon Hatchway. And for Hatchway, it's her telling him that she knows who it could possibly be. Someone the FBI has been hiding for the last 2 years. But I want to go ahead and transition back over to, well, Techno, because Techno, he's like on the verge of dying. You have Scourge right now doing different things in the base of the Thunderbolts. But while doing different things, it's also Scourge kind of realizing that when he came to Atlas, there's something wrong with him, because in that last storyline we covered, again, for Atlas, he's not really used to ion energy like, Wonder Man is. And so he is constantly growing in size. And so it does seem like sooner or later he might explode full of energy. And so while you have Scourge go check on Atlas, you did have Techno focus on Jolt. Jolt is coming back to life in this storyline, but it's also him kind of wondering, like, why in the world did he come back here? Because again, for Techno, he was part of that Baron Zemo team, but he was one of the few people who did not like the idea of being a hero. But now it's him kind of wondering, like, why did I come back here for? What is my purpose? But at the same time, he wants to make sure that Jolt does survive. I had a hard time saying that Jolt does survive and make it out of all of this mess. But as we get back over to Titan, you didn't have Isaac tell, Moonstone what she's going through at the moment. Because right now it's him saying, you are enjoying the idea of being a hero, and you are exploring these new emotions that have been given to you because you took on this hero role. But also at the same time, you're falling in love with Hawkeye. And my boy Clint like, wait, whoa, she's what right now? Like, hey, that's kind of cool. But it's also him saying, like, hey, by the way, we have to go ahead and take the Moonstone away by force, because the Moonstone in your possession could lead to huge things happening down the road for Earth, or really the entire universe. And so it's Isaac saying, like, hey, sorry, but I know you don't want to give your champion a hero on the stone, but, like, we are about to force the stone out of you and take it away. But getting over to Atlas, kind of getting into the ending of this chapter, it's really more of us seeing, Well, you have Scourge right now trying to figure out what's happening to Atlas because Atlas is right now growing in size, right? But also not really being able to hold on to ion energy very well. And so, with all that being said, it does seem like sooner or later he may explode. But you have Scourge realize that Atlas is now looking behind him. And we come to find out that Jolt is now back officially alive again. And now it seems like she wants some revenge against Scourge because, again, he did kill her off. And so this leads us into the final chapter of today's video. And honestly, kind of looking at this right now, this is almost not literally a tie-in to the whole main idea of maximum security. But anyways, when it comes to Jolt, is her kind of giving us a rundown what exactly happened to her. And as we all know, Scourge did shoot her, and it did seem like she had died. But then you had Techno step in. And we kind of learn here that because she was changed by Armin Zola, that something happened to her after she had died. Like she was able to come back to life. Now, when it came to Techno, he wanted to study her, kind of figure out what actual changes happened to her thanks to Armin Zola. But then, of course, things had popped off the base. She popped out. She's alive again. And now her main goal is to, well, stop Scourge at first. But you have Scourge tell her, like, hey, don't have to fight me. Like right now, we have to work together. And the reason because your friend Atlas here is going to explode very soon. Once he does that right there, it's all over. Now, she believes at first this is all Scourge doing, but she was not there for the Avengers and Thunderbolts crossover for the Nefaria protocol. The idea that for Atlas, even though he gained his powers by ion energy, he does not know how to full control his ion form. So right now, he may explode. Now, getting back over to our other heroes who are right now on Titan, is the idea that you had Captain Marvel basically betrayed the team. Like, at first, all like, yeah, I'll help you guys. And he took everyone over to Titan. But now it's him making sure the rest of the team right now does not try to step in when it comes to Isaac trying to remove the Moonstone out of, well, Moonstone. And so we also get reminded here that in the past, Songbird and also Captain Marvel had a small thing with one another. And Charcoal, he's all like, hey, the way these two are looking at each other, you can kind of tell they got a past with one another. Okay. But either way, right now, is Captain Marvel helping Isaac to begin the process of removing the Moonstone. And really, you have Hawkeye trying his best to convince everyone like what Isaac's doing right now is completely wrong. Now, it's also mentoring Isaac saying like, we're not going to kill her. Like, hey, we'll make sure she stay alive. Because our goal right now is to remove the Moonstone. Because in their mindset, she's still a bad guy because her past actions. But also, it's kind of the Moonstone did not choose her properly. So why in the world should they allow her to continue on? But it's Hawkeye saying, like, look at her now. And matter of fact, you have her step in and say, I have changed. Like, read my mind. You can tell I'm a changed person. I want to be a hero. I want to be a good friend. I want to be something better than I was in the past. I am now completely different. But for Isaac, he's not really trying to listen. But you do have Hawkeye say, enough is enough. If I have to fight you guys to save her life, I will do that. So it's him right now trying his best to go up against, well, Mentor and also Isaac. But now we have to pick out a character known as Miles Wharton. Now for Miles Wharton, he'll become somewhat important in the next video, but it's the idea that he has been working behind the scenes, right? And we see Miles right now receiving some kind of package, but kind of using the name of Henry Gyrich. Now for Miles, he does work for the Commission of Superhuman Activities, but also works with somebody else. So a double spy in a way. But it's him right now retrieving some kind of package. We're also doing a few more panels of the idea of Andrea getting very close to publishing her book about what's going on with Roxxon and also the CSA. But she wants to get confirmation about the idea of doing a story by the brother of the woman who died in the Roxxon company, because she believes once her book is published, it could start an actual war between superheroes. But now we kind of pick with some members of the council for the V Battalion. Now for these council members, well, one of them, he's going through a training session, right? But then he's confronted by another member. Now this member, they're really trying to say like, hey, did you hear the news? And right now the news is really more about the idea of Atlas about to explode. Now guys, remember, when it came to the last Citizen V, they told her to go assassinate somebody. We were not told who, but she said no. We kind of get the idea that they were asking her to assassinate, well, Atlas. But this kind of leads to the idea of the story kind of wrapping up pretty quickly here, because we do switch back over to the rest of the team right now on Titan. And you have Captain Marvel step in. And for Captain Marvel, it's really more him trying to convince Isaac and also Mentor that one, when it comes to Moonstone, she has changed. But it's also him saying, like, I'll watch over her. If she does anything wrong, anything evil, I will then step in. And once I do, we'll then bring her back over to Titan and remove the stone from her. But for right now, she has proven that she is now a hero, that she's right now trying her best to change her life around. Now, you also have Isaac being able to shut down the voices that she has been hearing. So right now, for Moonstone's mental state, is back to normal again. But also, she has a brand new outfit as well. But this kind of leads into the ending of the storyline, because you have Scourge call up Hank Pym. Hank's all like, how in the heck to get a hold of Avengers line? But it's Scourge right now saying, dude, I ain't got the time because we got a problem with Atlas. Now for Hank Pym, it says, because Atlas did gain his powers through ion energy, the problem is that he doesn't understand how to control that kind of energy in his ion form. And so he has to like explode, like go through a death process like Wonder Man did, kind of fully understand and control his ion form. And so basically he has to explode. But if he does, well, many innocent people are going to die. And so what you have Scourge do, say, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and have me absorb inside my staff. My staff can hold him. Once he does explode, it'll cause some damage in the area where no innocent people should die. Now, I kind of want to dive into the idea of Atlas and also Jolt. Because for Atlas, he always looked at Jolt as like a little sister. Because we had learned a long time ago for Atlas, he did have a little sister. Unfortunately, she had died. And she always wanted to hang out with her big bro. But for him, he didn't like her that much. And so one day, when she had to follow him on her bike, she got hit, she died. That was it, right? And so for him, he always created the idea of losing his little sister. And so when he looks at Jolt, he sees her as his little sister. So it's him thinking that he's going to officially die and him saying goodbye to her. And it's Jolt saying goodbye to her supposed big brother. And then he explodes inside the staff of Scourge. So the day is saved, but now it seems like Atlas is now dead. Okay, so getting back into our coverage over Marvel Knights, my last video really told me that you guys like the idea of us covering this series. And honestly, for a small channel like mine and seeing those kind of views was honestly pretty good, you know? The thumbs up, thumbs down, the reactions, the comments, you know? For me personally, it kind of seemed like you guys want me to continue on, which is good because I want to. But also, we're going to cover the second story arc in this series. Now, this is also us continuing our coverage over maximum security as well, because the third chapter of the storyline is actually a tie-in to that Marvel event. So it kind of works out for us. You know, we're continuing our coverage over Marvel Knights, but also continuing our coverage over maximum security as well. But with that being said, getting into today's storyline, I want you guys to kind of remember that when it came to the late 1990s, early 2000s, as we all know, when it came to Marvel Comics, they were struggling a lot. They had filed for bankruptcy. People were no longer buying their books. And on top of that, there's other factors as well that happened behind the scenes. And so for Marvel, they were struggling. And so what they did was in the late 1990s, going into the early 2000s, they kind of gave us three different things. You had Marvel Max, Ultimate Marvel, and Marvel Knights. Now, I saw someone online say, like, when it came to Marvel Max, right, that was really made for the adults, you know, more adult themed stuff. And for Ultimate Marvel, it was for the new generation to get into, bringing some new readers. But Marvel Knights was kind of a mixture of both, right? Like bring in new readers, but also bring back the old ones as well. And honestly, all three things worked out pretty well for Marvel Comics. Because for Marvel Knights, their main goal was to focus more on like the low tier, low profile characters. So like Daredevil, the Punisher, Black Panther, Black Widow. Now for me personally, the Punisher I would not really say, because in the early 1990s to mid 1990s, the dude had like 3 or 4 to 5 different books going on left and right. But anyways, it was the idea kind of focusing on these low profile characters, get them more love in the world of comics. And so when it came to Marvel Knights, that was their goal. You had different storylines like Elektra, Daredevil, Ninja, Wolverine, and Punisher. Like you had these different books, right? And so when it came to the Marvel Knights series, it was really more the idea of putting together a team of these low profile characters and hoping that fans would love the idea of these low profile characters. So, like, again, Daredevil, Black Widow, Dagger, Shang-Chi, and of course, the Punisher. Now, in our last video, we had talked about the idea that you had our heroes come together, right, to fight against a character known as Ulick the Troll. Now, in my last video, I had actually saw someone mention the fact that they love the storyline for the most part. They love the characters coming together. Their main issue was the ending. It did seem a tad bit rushed. And honestly, that person is correct because in the end of the storyline, you basically had our heroes help Ulick the Troll get what he wanted. This horn that could possibly help him get revenge against Asgard. And it's kind of wild because for our heroes, they did not really try to stop him. Like they tried at first, but like not really that hard. And they're kind of, you know what? He's only here for one item. Here, take this and go away. And not really knowing like the possibility of what he could do down the road. And so it did seem a tad bit rushed. But either way, as we get into the next storyline, it's now the next story arc with the idea of our heroes wanting to go after the Punisher. Before we're able to properly see our heroes go after the Punisher, well, we pick up with Zhao Ran. Now, for Zhao Ran, this is the second one, better known as Zhao Manshi, and he was trained by the original Zhao Ran. And matter of fact, both characters use the same name while being out there in the world as mercenaries. But we see this one right now breaking into this AIM facility and trying his best to find the biological weapon lab. And of course, it does seem like he finds a map that leads right into that lab. But now we do switch over to, well, Daredevil, Black Widow, Dagger, and Shang-Chi. Now, you had the four of them kind of agree to meet up at this diner, but you have all four agree on the idea of tracking down the Punisher. Now, around this time in Marvel Comics, when it came to Daredevil, like, he had a few run-ins with the Punisher, but for him, he always believed the Punisher should be put down. The idea of the Punisher being out there killing off people is just completely wrong to Daredevil. And it does kind of seem like he's a tad bit obsessed with the idea of trying his best to bring down the Punisher. But you do have Black Widow, Dagger, and also Shang-Chi agreeing to work with him to hopefully bring down the Punisher. Now, we also get reminded that there's something going on with Cloak, Dagger's partner, but we're not really told right now what exactly is going on with his character. But while you do have these four characters right now having their meeting, they don't realize they're also being watched right now by the Punisher. He's all like, you know what? I knew it was going to happen. All right, boy. You want me? Come get me, Daredevil. Now, it's him also know about Black Widow and Dagger, but he does not know a lot about Shang-Chi. And that right there is currently kind of bothering him a tad bit. But while you do have our heroes continue on with that meeting, we do jump right back over to Zoran again. And you have Zoran just cutting through these different like AIM soldiers, AIM agents who are right now trying their best to keep him out of the lab he's trying to head over to. But my God, this dude just cuts right through them and continues on, like kind of shows how cool he is in a way as a mercenary. Now, we're also kind of getting reminded that in our last story arc, when it came to Shang-Chi, when we saw him first, he was trying to protect some young girl who was kidnapped by the Triad. The problem was that he was then attacked by some trolls, really more Ulick the Troll, and unfortunately, the girl just disappeared. And so for Shang-Chi, he feels like he had failed this couple that he had promised that he would bring their daughter back home to them. So it's the book now saying like, Shang-Chi is in a bad spot right now mentally because he failed this family. Now that they lost their daughter. And in this book as well, we're kind of seeing Black Widow be in Dagger's corner. Like for Dagger, for me, it does seem like she's a tad bit lost as a hero. And so she needs that person in her corner to kind of like guide her on how to be a better hero, how to live in this crazy world better known as Marvel Comics. And so we're seeing Black Widow trying to properly take care of Dagger like a little sister and everything. Saying, hey, come with me, stay in my apartment, I'll cook dinner. Like, I got you. But again, while you have Dagger doing that, let's not forget there's something going on with Cloak. Because for Cloak, in our last video, we saw him going after different people who were like doing some wrong things. When I say that, I don't mean like murder or kidnapping or stealing. Really more of like, oh, playing this card game and you rigged the card game to let you in. In his mind, you gotta go. And so right now you have someone park in the handicap spot and they're not really handicapped. And so you didn't have, Cloak appear and just takes him away because he's all like, hey, you are breaking the law and you gotta go. But while you have Black Widow and also Dagger, head home to Black Widow's apartment, well, when they walk inside, they come to find out they got a visitor, really more Black Widow does. And that would be no other than good old Nick Fury. Now, for Nick Fury, he does not really play a major role in this storyline, but he is here for this chapter and the next one as well. But as we do switch back over to Zoran, we see him just, again, continuing to beat down on all of these different, AIM soldiers, AIM guards. Like, no one is properly able to stand up to this guy. But we see him find his way into that lab. Now, once he does get his hands on some kind of project better known as Z99. But you didn't have Chuck Dixon, the writer of this book, begin the process of trying to actually put together a team. And what I mean by that statement is that you have Moon Knight confront Daredevil, because Moon Knight got word that for Daredevil, he's putting together some kind of team. And for Moon Knight, he wants in on his team. Matter of fact, it's going to be Moon Knight trying to help the team out the best way he can. More in a Batman kind of way. You'll see what I mean here in a moment. But it's him saying, like, I heard that right now you, Shang-Chi, Black Widow, and also Dagger are putting together some kind of team, and I want in on it. We do learn who Zoran is working for, and we kind of find out that he's working for no other than Zhang Fu, the father to Shang-Chi. And so now he's telling Zoran, hey, I'm gonna need you to go ahead and assassinate my son. And that leads into the next chapter. Now, as we get into the second chapter, it's really more of us now picking up with the Punisher, right? And you have the Punisher just looking over different photos and facts that he has gathered about the different people who are going to come after him. So Daredevil, Black Widow, Dagger, and also Shang-Chi. Now, when it comes to Punisher, again, we get the idea that he realized that Shang-Chi is the wild card in the whole entire group. Like, Black Widow is the dangerous one. Dagger, she got some good powers there. Daredevil, he's really too committed on the idea of bringing down the Punisher. But for some reason, Shang-Chi could be that wild card that could throw everything off for the Punisher. And when we do switch over to Shang-Chi, it's really more of us now seeing him really more having a nightmare, because it's him kind of facing the army of ninja soldiers that work for his father. It's the idea that his dad keeps telling him that you have failed me, that you have dishonored me. But for Shang-Chi, it's really more him trying to tell his father in his dream that he does not really care, because he's not there to serve his father, to honor his father. And so once you do have Shang-Chi wake up, we see him be confronted by the mother of the young girl that he was supposed to save, but unfortunately could not save. And it's her right now being a nice host for him right now, but also kind of hinting again that she really does miss her daughter a lot. And so it bothers Shang-Chi that he had failed these parents in the idea of saving their daughter. But now we're able to switch back over to Moon Knight and also Daredevil. Now, earlier I had said that for Moon Knight, he wants to be the Batman of this team. And what I meant by that statement is the idea that he believes that right now for Daredevil, Black Widow, Shang-Chi, and Dagger, and now adding in Moon Knight would be one heck of a team to have in the city. But it's also him saying, I have the money. So what I want to do is fund this new team, but also join this new team as well. Now, you also have this part of the book kind of turn into a joke, because it's Matt Murdock saying okay, cool. So who's the money coming from? Moon Knight or Mark Spector? Kind of saying we already know who you are. We know that you're Mark Spector. And matter of fact, almost every single hero out there in the world knows that Moon Knight is Mark Spector. Now, we do learn why Nick Fury came to Black Widow apartment 4 because he had been watching her. And so it's him saying, like, listen, I just saw that you have been working alongside with Daredevil, that chick right there, Dagger, Shang-Chi, and also the Punisher. Like, that right there is a problem. And not really because of Daredevil or Dagger or Shang-Chi, really more because of the Punisher. And so you have Black Widow say, listen, we're not allies with the Punisher. And matter of fact, this new team right now is trying their best to locate the Punisher and bring him in. And so once she tells Nick that, he's kind of like, cool, had to make sure. Well, you know what? I'm out now, later, and leaves. Now we're getting another example of the idea that there's something going on with Cloak. And we're not really told, again, still, but we see Cloak going after somebody who paid for one newspaper but grabs two. And so, of course, breaking the rule. And for Cloak, you gotta go. So the guy's also gone in a matter of seconds as well. Now, we do see the Punisher now going after a new target, right? It's the idea of the Punisher now trying to figure out what else is happening in this city. So you have the Punisher go over to a guy known as Mickey. Now, he already knows that Mickey knows things happening in the city when it comes to the underworld, right? Drugs or any kind of other evil activity. And so you have Mickey tell the Punisher that there's a new guy who had apparently moved in. And apparently his name is Daddy Wronglegs. But Daddy Wronglegs gone out of his way to create some kind of drug out there, designer stuff. And so for the Punisher, this Wrongleg guy gotta go, right? Now, once you do have the Punisher head over to the location where he could possibly find this guy Wronglegs, we come to find out that Wronglegs is not no regular human being. It's some kind of creature. Now, this makes a lot of sense though, because you have the Punisher say when he arrived at the warehouse, he realized that this warehouse did belong to the Haitian mob. They all disappeared. Why? How? Now we know. Because of this creature right here. But as we do switch back over to Shang-Chi, we see him going downstairs. And he thought at first of a normal conversation with the couple that he has been staying with. Nah, that's out the door because once he does walk down, he's then confronted by Zoran, who again was hired now by Shang-Chi's father to kill off, well, Shang-Chi. But this leads into the last chapter. Now, for me personally, I had no idea how this issue right here, issue number 6, the tie-in at first for maximum security. And then I realized, oh, the tie-in comes at the very end with the idea of the Punisher fighting against that creature. You'll see what I mean here in a moment, because when we do switch over to Shang-Chi opening pages for the last issue, we see him fighting against Zoran, right? And that battle at first, it's really more of us and the two of them kind of be on par with one another. Now, when it comes to Shang-Chi, as we all know, the dude is the master of Kung Fu. So of course, by in this section, he's going to win. But right now, it does seem like he is somewhat struggling. But I want to go ahead and switch over to the Punisher because with him, I can kind of explain like why in the world is this a tie-in to maximum security? And let me explain. Because when it came to Marvel Comics, right, in the early 2000s, they gave us an event known as Maximum Security, where you had the Intergalactic Council say humans are a problem. Like they keep popping up across the universe, causing problems of the empires in the universe. And so you had the council say humans should be locked away forever. And so just like that, the Earth got turned into a prison planet. Now, after that, it said, you know what? Any aliens out there across the entire universe, if they do any kind of crime, they'll serve their time on Earth. And so just like that, the Earth again got turned into a prison, but now not just for humans, but for any aliens across the entire universe. And so with that being said, the idea of the Punisher right now fighting against this creature is most likely because the idea that he is a criminal that got sent over to Earth. But now we got to switch over to Matt Murdock, Daredevil, Black Widow, Dagger, and also Moon Knight. Now, is Moon Knight showing off this place that he believes will be a good base for the team, right? Now, for Daredevil, he usually does work alone. And so he's kind of like, listen, I like you guys, you're all cool and all, but I work alone, except for sometimes I do team up with Black Widow and also Spider-Man and other heroes as well. But again, usually I do work alone. But it's kind of Black Widow saying, Matt, think this through though. Like, you have a great team here. You got a base that's right in the center of the city. And also, with us being here together, we have better chances of handling different things popping up left and right in the city as a team. And so it's now Matt saying, right now, this team will work together to bring down the Punisher. After that, he has to think about it. But getting back over the battle between Chang-Chi and Zoran really is more of the book kind of giving us a few more pages of the idea of him kind of like still being on somewhat the same level as Zoran. Like no one's getting that edge over the other person just yet. And matter of fact, this part right here is not really important. And the same thing goes with the Punisher as well. Because with the Punisher, is the book now showing us that he has tried so many different things, right? Guns, grenades, knives, but nothing is working on this creature at all. And there's some homeless people that also been affected by this creature. So now on the creature side, also trying to attack the Punisher as well. So for our boy there, he's struggling, but we're now getting into the ending of this storyline. And once again, for me personally, it kind of seems like this is another story arc kind of being done pretty fast and quick. And the reason why I'm saying that, because you have Chang-Chi being able to easily now defeat Zoran, right? And so once he does that, he moves on with his day. And for the Punisher, because for the Punisher, it's the idea that you have him right now fighting against a creature still, but still struggling, right? And so for the Punisher, while struggling against the creature, you didn't have the Fantastic Four arrive. Now, when they do arrive, right, they are able to easily bring down this creature. Matter of fact, they only send in 2 members, the Human Torch and the Thing. And that's really it. So with those 2 alone, they were able to bring down the creature. But also, they don't recognize that Frank Castle is the Punisher. They're like, hey man, sorry about that. Anyways, he's some kind of criminal. We got it. You know what? Anyways, we're out. Bye. And they leave. And for Frank Castle, he's all like, look at them. The Fantastic Four. They can handle business in like an hour or 2 and still get home in time for dinner. Look at them. Superheroes. What the heck? And also him saying like, why can't I get superheroes to come after me? Kind of saying like Daredevil, Black Widow, Dagger, and Shang-Chi are no on the level of the Fantastic Four. With that being said, okay, so getting back into our coverage over the X-Men, and technically we're getting back into our coverage of the X-Men, but also back into our coverage over Maximum Security as well, because we only have 2 more videos left when it comes to Maximum Security. We have this one and the next one. Now, this one here is going to be more of an X-Men video, so we're going to cover the last 2 X-Men tie-ins for this event. So X-Men issue number 107 and X-Men Unlimited issue number 29. But the next one will be more an Avenger video, because there's an Avenger tie-in, and the last video should be, or last part, or last issue, sorry, should be the last chapter of the main storyline for Maximum Security. But anyways, getting back into our coverage over the X-Men, I'm really kind of hyped with the idea of us getting back on track when it comes to our coverage over the X-Men. And the reason why, because I really do want to get into Extreme X-Men and also like New X-Men, because I heard like those 2 things right there are like amazing. And for me personally, when it comes to Chris Claremont, right, when he came back for X-Men Revolution, I don't think his new run or this one right here is really that good at all. I kind of felt like his stories were just all over the place with the Neo, the Goth, like just here, there, everywhere kind of situation. But anyways, I'm kind of hyped because I heard when it came to Extreme X-Men, that was technically amazing. Now, with that being said, getting into the opening pages for X-Men issue number 107, we pick up with Nightcrawler. Now, around this time in Marvel Comics, when it came to Nightcrawler, he was really more of becoming a priest around this time in Marvel Comics, trying his best to move away from the idea of the X-Men. Now, of course, while being an ex-member of the X-Men, you always get pulled right back into their life events and everything, right? And so while you have Nightcrawler right now just hanging out at the school of Charles Xavier, he's then confronted by, well, Sir Rice. Now, for Sir Rice, she is a Shi'ar Empire agent for Leandra. Now, when it came to Sir Rice, she was also part of Excalibur, like for a very brief moment, to the point where her and Nightcrawler were able to kind of have a relationship with one another. And so, with her being back on Earth right now, she goes right over to Nightcrawler and wanting to kiss him. Now, with him trying to become a priest, that is no longer allowed anymore, right? And so he's kind of like, whoa, that felt great and all and everything, but like, I'm very serious about the idea of my training becoming a priest, which also means I cannot kiss you anymore. I'm sorry. Now, it's also her informing Nightcrawler that she came here for a particular reason, a mission, because right now she needs the help of the X-Men. But this kind of leads us over to Rogue. Now, when it comes to Rogue, right, around this time in Marvel Comics, she was one of the leaders of the X-Men, but also she's right now trying to deal with the idea of crossing that line. And let me explain, because for Rogue, she had killed someone in her last video when it came to the X-Men, both X-Men teams coming together and fighting against a character known as Goth. Now, for Rogue, she did not kill that person on purpose. It was the idea that she had absorbed the powers of Gambit, and now we know how to control his powers. She had on accident killed the guy. So we see her right now and trying to deal with the idea of killing someone for the first time and wondering what does it mean for her in the future. Now, one of the things I do want to kind of bring back up again is the whole idea of Charles Xavier on this time in Marvel Comics. You see, for Charles Xavier, he had once again left the X-Men and went into space. And the reason why, because in an earlier storyline for the X-Men, they had discovered that there are mutants in the Skrull race. Now, in the Skrull race, if you are a mutant, you have two options. Really, you don't have options. There's two choices made for you. One, you're killed off at childbirth, or two, you're used as a weapon in war. Those are only two, not again, choices they make for you. But anyways, when it came to Charles Xavier, he felt like he should lead a small army of Skrull mutants to go out of his way to free other Skrull mutants in the Skrull Empire. Now, all that being said, for Charles Xavier, he's kind of part of the reason why we have the whole idea of maximum security. You see, you had a thing known as the Intergalactic Council. Now, the council had decided that when it came to the human race, they are a problem because you have the humans like the Avengers, Fantastic Four, or the X-Men just pop up in different empires across the universe. And sometimes they do help out in a good way, and sometimes they help out in a bad way. And so for the council to kind of like, you know what? Humans are a problem and they should be locked away and turn the Earth into literally a prison planet. Now, you didn't have the council say any other aliens out there in the universe who do any kind of crime will serve their time on Earth as well. Again, the whole idea of maximum security. Now, when it came to Charles Xavier, he was one of the last few examples used in the council meeting of why Earth should become a prison planet. But later on, we saw that you had Charles meet up with Leandra. We also have to remember that for Leandra, she is the actual leader of the Intergalactic Council. But for her, she kind of feels like the council is being manipulated by somebody else. And the question is now, who? And so you have her and Charles kind of agreed to work together. And so what they did was they sent down 3 different people, kind of help the process of figuring out who in the world is behind all of this mess. Now, we already saw one of the 3 was Bishop. In our last video, you had Bishop being able to arrive back on Earth, back in the main Marvel's timeline. And so with him being back, you had Charles say, hey, I need you right now to go down to Earth to kind of help the idea to figure out who in the world is trying to turn the Earth into a prison planet. Now, another person was Cerise, and she was sent by, Leandra. The last person is Z-Can. Now, for Z-Can, she's one of the members of the Cadre K group. Cadre K is a group of mutant Skrulls that are being led by Charles Xavier. Now, for Z-Can, she's right now on Earth at the moment, but we see her being confronted by the Blood Brothers. Now, while it's happening, luckily for her, Rogue appears. And so once you do have Rogue being able to deal with the Blood Brothers, you then have Z-Can pass everything she knows that Charles wants done over to Rogue. It's the combination of Rogue's powers and also Z-Can powers as well. Because of Z-Can, she is a telepath. And so with that happening, is Rogue right now downloading everything she needs to know that Charles told Z-Can in an earlier storyline. But I want to go ahead and switch over to Bishop because Bishop is the other agent for Charles Xavier, right? But again, with the whole idea of Earth now being a prison planet, there's still a whole procedure you have to go through before you just teleport it right down to Earth. And so for Bishop, he is currently waiting his turn to be teleported over to Earth. And so right now, he's at this prison outpost that's near Pluto. And you have some other prisoners try to show him up, and you have Bishop put those guys right in his place. Or in their place, sorry. But either way, he's right and waiting his turn to be teleported down to Earth to continue Charles Xavier's big plan. Now, we're also being reminded about Dr. Reyes as well. See, Dr. Reyes, okay, so she's now fighting an addiction right now with a new drug that she had consuming. Let me explain. You see, for Dr. Reyes, in an earlier storyline, she was trapped inside a building with a group called the Neo. The Neos are basically an offshoot of the mutant race. The problem was that, okay, so there was an earlier storyline known as X-Men Powerless. In that storyline, you had Mr. Sinister and a high evolutionary agree to kind of take away the powers of the mutant race across the entire world. Now you had the X-Men being able to restore all the powers back to the mutant race. But when the High Evolutionary and Mr. Sinister pulled off their plan at first, it affected the Neos as well. And for the Neos, they had lost a few of their own people. Let me explain, because you had some of the Neos who were using their abilities for different reasons. Like, for example, you had one girl who was underwater just swimming. And then when the plans went down, bam, there goes her powers. She drowned underwater, and she was the daughter of the leader of the Neos. And so you had the Neos believe that one, they had to go after Mr. Sinister, but also the X-Men as well. And so for Dr. Reyes, she was trapped in the building with the Neos, but she also found some drugs to use to enhance her abilities. The problem is that now those drugs have become or build an addiction in her body. But getting back over to Rogue, right? You do have Rogue go back to school of Charles Xavier, holding the body of Zcan. Now, Zcan is alive, but barely. But it's the idea that once you do have Rogue appear at first, for the X-Men, they have no idea that Rogue is actually Rogue. And the reason why, because Rogue right now looks like a Skrull. And because she did absorb the abilities of Zcan, including the idea of shape-shifting, for Wolverine, she smells like a complete Skrull. There's not one part of her that smells like Rogue. So they have no idea at first if she's somebody they can trust. But once you do have Rogue proved by touching Colossus that she is, again, Rogue, you didn't have Rogue tell everything she had learned from Zcan. That for the X-Men, their goal right now is to head over to Ellis Island. And the reason why, because there is this device that's used to teleport aliens down to Earth. And so for Rogue, she feels like that Charles wants them to go ahead and get rid of that device. Now, she's not really clear on everything just yet because all the different things she had absorbed from Zcan's mind is not clear to her yet. So right now, she believes that their goal is to get rid of that device. And so you have the X-Men head over to Ellis Island because they're in their minds right now, their main goal is to get rid of that device, right? Now, again, for Rogue, right now in her mind, everything is not clear yet that she has gathered from Zcan. But as the battle goes on, her mind becomes more and more clear. And you have Rogue realize what's the X-Men actual mission. They're not here to get rid of that device. Instead, they're here to welcome back someone who's working for Charles Xavier. And of course, that would be Bishop. And so just like that, you have Bishop arrive back on Earth and getting ready to rejoin the X-Men. And so as we get into X-Men Unlimited issue number 29, we're now picking up with the X-Men kind of being happy about the idea of Bishop being back now. But also, this was the moment I realized that for some members of the X-Men, they don't know Bishop. Like, for example, Nightcrawler. Because for Nightcrawler, when Bishop had joined the X-Men, him and Kitty Pryde were not on the X-Men team. They were over in Excalibur. So the idea of Bishop right now is kind of like, hey, I don't know the guy that well, but I'm guessing one of the good guys, one of us. That's great, cool. Let's get the heck out of here. Now, luckily for our heroes, some help does arrive. It's the Avengers. Now, it's not the whole entire team of the Avengers. It's really more just Goliath, Hank Pym, and also Warbird, aka Carol Danvers. Now, there is a reason why you have the Avengers here meeting up with the X-Men. Because all of this is part of Charles Xavier's plan. Because on the Citadel for Ronan the Accuser, there is this computer, right, that has key information that will then help the Avengers kind of bring down the whole idea of maximum security. But the thing is, they got to get onto the Citadel that belongs to Ronan the Accuser. Now, the last time we saw the Avengers go up in space to the Citadel, well, they got blown out of the sky by him. And so the question is now, how will they be able to sneak onto the actual Citadel? Well, thanks to Hank Pym, the new Quinjet does have some cloaking device to allow them the ability to just get right over to the Citadel. Matter of fact, you have Hank Pym crash right into it actually. But once you do have our team get out of the Quinjet, they did break up to two different teams. The first team is really more like Bishop's team to find that computer that has information to help the X-Men and the Avengers in this whole mess when it comes to maximum security. But the second team, well, they're going to fight against the soldiers who were protecting this place, including Ronan the Accuser as well. So we get a lot of different pages where it's our two teams, both right now trying to complete their goals. Now, for team one, Bishop's team, right? As they're walking around, they look out in space. They see the Earth. And by this point, when it came to Ego the planet, he has terraformed at least half of the Earth. Now, just in case of anybody just getting into our coverage, right? Let's not forget that Ego, the living planet, is on Earth as well as a prisoner. But the problem is that right now he is merging with the Earth. So sooner or later, the Earth will be completely merged with Ego, the living planet. And so for our heroes, they're trying their best to find a way to end that mess before it comes down to that. But then we're given a page to remind us about Z-Can, because let's not forget that earlier for Z-Can, she was badly beaten by the Blood Brothers. Now, yes, she was saved by Rogue at the very last second, but also you had Rogue touch her, which means she absorbed her energy, her powers, and part of her mind as well. So this girl was beaten physically and also mentally. And so you have Forge and also Tessa trying their best to help her recover. The problem is that she wakes up and just goes into attack mode. Now you do have the two being able to calm her down and put her back to sleep. But the problem is that now it's kind of like she was already in a bad state. And now doing that could have made things even worse for her injuries physically and also mentally. But getting back over to Bishop's team, right? You have Bishop's team being able to find a computer they need access to get the info they need to end all of this mess for maximum security, right? The problem is that they can't turn it on. They can't access it. Now, in an earlier tie-in, we saw Charles Xavier hand Bishop some kind of key after you have the two of them being able to bring down Deathbird. That key now gives our team the ability to now access that computer. Now, once they do that, now the next problem is they can't read any of the words. It's in Kree and also Skrull as well. Now, luckily for Rogue, she had already absorbed the mind of Z-Con. So now she can read some words that are in Skrull. What about the Kree part? Well, they're in luck, because there is Warbird, Carol Danvers. She's now part Kree. And so once you have Rogue touch her, bam, just like that, Rogue now has the ability to read both Kree and also Skrull. Getting back over to Team 2, right? They're fighting against Ronan the Accuser. And matter of fact, for me personally, they're doing a good job going up against this character. But here's the thing, because as the battle goes on between Team 2 and Ronan the Accuser, you didn't have to tell his scientists to take the energy that Ego's right now feeding off of when it comes to him terraforming the Earth and give that energy over to, well, Ronan the Accuser. It's almost him borderline becoming a god level character. And so with that happening, our heroes right now do not stand a chance at all anymore. And so they had no choice but to go ahead and retreat. Now, while trying to retreat, we do see Team 1 arrive. Now, once you have Team 1 arrive, it's kind of like, cool, everyone is here. The Quinjet does get blown up, But you didn't have Rogue being able to kiss one of the pilots, right? And once she does that right there, she now knows how to fly a different plane to get them all the heck out of there. And so once you do have our heroes get on one of the alien planes, or sorry, planes, spacecraft, you didn't have our heroes being able to escape. And the story kind of ends on that note, with our heroes now having that info and handing that info over to the Avengers. And this leads into the final part of the whole coverage of Maximum Security, the last video, the Avenger tie-in in part 3 of the main storyline. Okay, so it's time for us to go ahead and wrap up our coverage over, well, Maximum Security and cover the last 2 issues that are technically part of this crossover, which is Avengers issue number 35, a tie-in, and also Maximum Security issue number 3, the final chapter in the main storyline of this whole entire event. Now, focusing on the first one, right? Avengers issue number 35 is also us picking up with a different Avengers team, better known as Avengers Infinity Team. You see, what happened was you had Quasar realize that there were these powerful cosmic beings on the way to destroy different parts of the universe. And so what he did was he had put together another Avengers team to go out in space to stop these cosmic beings. And so for these heroes, they're right now trying their best to just head back over to Earth. But here's the problem though, because in an earlier tie-in that we had covered, we had saw that when these heroes try to go back towards Earth, they kept getting stopped by different guards or police officers who work for the Intergalactic Council, who had basically decided that Earth, humans, should only be on Earth, and that is really it, and basically turn the Earth into, well, a prison planet. Now, just in case we have anybody just joining our coverage over this event, the whole idea of Maximum Security is really more about how you have the Intergalactic Council say humans are a problem, because you would have humans just pop up left and right across the entire universe. Now, sometimes the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, or the Avengers are trying their best to help out people in those areas. And sometimes they do a great job. And sometimes they make things worse in those areas. And so you have the council say humans should be locked away. Just like that, the Earth got turned into a prison planet. But you didn't have the council say, oh, any aliens out there across the whole entire universe, if they do commit some kind of crime, they got to serve that time on Earth. Again, turn the Earth into an actual prison planet. But when it came to Quasar, his Avengers team were trying their best to get back over to Earth. But then they got started some police officers who work for the council, because right now their main goal is to get any humans out there in the universe back on Earth, including this Avengers team. Now, in an earlier tie-in, we saw that, but you had our heroes being able to just beat down on those guards and continue on with their journey. But that now leads us right into Avengers issue number 35. Now, with this issue alone, we're now picking up with this Avengers team arriving at the Intergalactic Council and demanding to talk to Leandra, of course, the leader of the Shi'ar Empire, but also the leader of this council. Now, for the Avengers, they're right now trying their best to pay her some kind of respect. But at the same time, they're kind of like, we want to know why in the world did you turn Earth into a prison planet? Now, she does explain why, right? And of course, you know the reason why, because what I said earlier. But it's also, you know, the Avengers are like, but who was there to speak up for us though? Like, who was there to represent us in this whole entire court session where you guys had decided to turn our planet into a prison planet? And she said, I was the one who spoke for you guys. Now, for our heroes, that's not okay at all, because she is not from Earth at all. But at the same time, it's kind of like, well, it does make a lot of sense because her connection with Charles Xavier. But it's also this Avengers team now saying like, we want to appeal the court decision here because honestly, it's not fair, because we didn't have anybody to represent us that had came from Earth. We had someone else step in. One, that's not okay at all. But two, why do you guys believe you have the right to turn our planet into a prison planet? Now, Leandra does hear out, you know, the different members of the Avengers, and she said she will talk to different members of the court to see if we can change things around for the betterment of the earth. But right now, you guys can stay here and rest overnight. But while you do have this Avengers team go out of their way to stay in their, chambers overnight at least to rest, we're kind of given a few pages, right? To kind of see how the idea of this event affecting the different members of this team, because for most of the team, they do come from Earth. So the idea of the Earth being locked down right now and turned into a prison planet really does, make them sad. Hits them in their feels. Now, while you do have all the different members of the Avengers now in the same room, you have Moondragon realize there's someone else in the room, some kind of spy, and now be a member of the Rule. Now, we have talked in the earlier parts of our coverage over this event that when it comes to the rules, that the rules are just the Kree. Now, we don't know how in the world the Kree had turned into rules, but the storyline right here does kind of explain everything to us, but also the whole idea of maximum security. Now, for the rules, their main goal right now is to knock out the Avengers. And once you do have each member of the Avengers get knocked out, they're now prisoners of the Rule. But now this begins the process of us learning how in the world the Kree was turned into the Rule in the first place. See, what Supreme Intelligence tells us right now is that when he came to the Kree race, he kind of realized that the Kree race was a race of powerful warriors, out there fighting for the Empire and everything. But he also realized when it came to their evolution, it had hit a dead end. And so his goal was to help the, Kree race evolve even more. But how would he pull that off? Well, he had started a war with the Shi'ar Empire. Once that war had officially started, you had the Shi'ar Empire use a negabomb. Now, the negabomb had radiation, of course, to it, and that radiation could be used as a way to help the Kree race evolve. The problem was that it would take a long period of time for it to help the Kree race to evolve. But then, thanks to humans, once again, you had the Supreme Intelligence find a way to speed up the evolution of the Kree race. And it's all because of the idea of the Forever Crystal. Now, I'm not going to dive too far into the idea of Forever Crystal, but it did appear in the storyline for, I want to say, Avengers Forever. And in that storyline, you have the Time Keyword destroyed, but also the Forever Crystal getting left behind. But with that crystal, he was then able to speed up the time process for the Kree. And of course, they evolved into the Rule. Now, what is his master plan when it comes to Earth, Ego, and like everything else, like the Kree Empire? And we learned here that for the Kree, because they're unrecognizable now, because they look like the Rule, that you didn't have to be able to work behind the scenes. They were the ones kind of controlling the whole council to turn the Earth into a living planet. It was Supreme Intelligence who worked behind the scenes to get Ego over to Earth. And here's the reason why. Because once you have Ego being able to consume the Earth, well, let's not forget that the Earth is only being watched by who? Ronan the Accuser, who's part of the Kree race. The whole entire system to watch over Earth is being watched over the Kree Empire. And so once you have Ego being able to consume the entire planet, so the Ego of the living planet consuming the Earth, right? He's going to get a whole ton of energy. They're going to take that energy and use that energy as a way to attack other empires in the universe. And they have a way to control Ego, the living planet. And so just like that, they now have this powerful weapon to use against other empires out there in the universe. And with the Earth being consumed, well, that means there's no issue to pop up when it comes to like the Avengers or Fantastic Four or the X-Men. Like for me personally, now this event has gotten a whole lot better. Like this tie-in, a few other tie-ins make this event a whole lot better. But it's now a scene that when it comes to the Supreme Intelligence, he has been plotting this for a good while, and it does seem like he may be able to pull it off. Because now we switch over to US Agent. Now, when we do, it's really more of us seeing him kind of informing the Avengers like, hey, listen, so I found out in the last chapter of the main storyline that the Rule are basically the Kree in disguise. So with him finding out that and knowing they're trying to kill off the entire planet, he says, with the power I have for being part of the CSA, the Commission of Superhuman Activity, well, that gives me accepting the right to use my authority to commandeering the Avengers and all different aliens and heroes across the earth to hopefully bring down the Kree and stop their plans. So it's him saying right now, for the time being, he now has control over the Avengers, other heroes, the aliens in prisons across America, and hopefully use them to bring down the Kree and save the entire planet. And so this kind of leads into the final chapter, right? Where now we're picking up with the Kree who are freaking out. And here's the reason why. Because they're now getting invaded by our heroes that's being led by US agents. You see, for these Kree, they're on an outpost in space that kept the whole entire solar system on lockdown. But now they're getting attacked by our heroes left and right. The Avengers, the X-Men, US Agent, Spider-Man, the list goes on, right? Now, Black Panther is there as well, and apparently he had helped out Charles Xavier in the earlier tie-in, but I kind of forgot how in the world he did that. But either way, he's there as well, so it's kind of like cool. And you also have Charles and the Cadre K being released. So the whole fight happening on this outpost. But with this being the last chapter of the whole entire event, we got to wrap everything up, right? So we do switch over to, well, the Avengers team being led by Quasar, who are currently being kept on a different space station farther into the universe. But you do have Tigra being able to break free. Now, once she does break free, she's then able to break everyone else out as well. Once you do have everyone get free, you have Quasar being able to teleport the entire team out that outpost, and now they're trying their best to get back over to Earth to help the rest of the heroes bring down the Kree. But now we got to switch back over to Earth because now we're picking up with the Fantastic Four and also Iron Man because they're trying their best to stop Ego from merging with the Earth. Now they're struggling, but you also have some magic users as well trying to help out. And again, they're also struggling. Now, luckily for Reed and also Tony, Gambit does arrive. Because his tie-in, you had Gambit being able to get data on how to stop Ego from merging with the planet. With that information, it now gives our heroes the chance to save the day, to save the Earth. But getting back over to the other Avengers team, right? They're meeting with the council once again, but this time it's really more Moondragon using everything she had learned from the Rule, who are again basically the Kree, to kind of show the council that they have been played. Now, at first, even though she has all this info and showing their minds like how they have been played, the entire council is not really trying to believe in what she is trying to show them. But you didn't have them get a call from the outpost where the other heroes are currently attacking at. And of course, that call came from Sorais, who was sent there by the Shi'ar Empire, right? And so it's her saying like, hey, y'all, listen, what you just heard is technically true. Now, while you have Sorais trying her best to explain everything, they get even more proof from the idea of the Supreme Intelligence, who also contacts the council, who tells the council like, yeah, it was me. And guess what, guys? I'm bringing the Kree Empire back. And once I do, I'm bringing everyone down. All of y'all are going to fall to us. All of y'all are going to beg once we're done. The Kree Empire will be the best empire across the entire universe. And so now the council knows they have been played. And you have Thor say, hey, listen, I feel bad for you guys, but right now, me and my team gotta get back to the rest of the heroes. And like that, that team also leaves as well. And all of this leads into the final showdown, right? Because when we do switch back over to Earth, what Reed's trying to do right now is turn Ego, the living planet, back into a spore again and give him over to a host and get that host off the Earth so the Earth will be safe again, right? The problem is that their choice right now is a Silver Surfer. And the question is, does he have enough energy, cosmic energy, to be able to take on Ego as a spore, as a host for Ego? And so while you have Reed trying his best to transfer the power of Ego into the Silver Surfer, we have to remember that when it comes to Ronan the Accuser, he has been draining the energy of Ego once Ego was, again, merging with the Earth. And so right now for Ronan, this dude is on a whole new level of power. He's an actual challenge. And so you have all our heroes trying their best to fight against him. But over time, he's getting weaker and weaker. And the reason why, because, well, the Silver Surfer is slowly merging with Ego. But here comes the problem, though. But the problem is that for Silver Surfer, he's not strong enough. And so, even though the power of Cosmic right now inside of him, he's not really able to step up. Somebody else has to. And here comes Quasar. Because for Quasar, he has the power of quantum. That power right there is a whole new level. It should give him the ability to adapt to the idea of being a host for Ego the Living Planet to get him off Earth. And so while you have that happening, Ronan, he's trying his best to stop Quasar from pulling this off. And so you have all these different heroes trying their best to stop him. But one hero truly does stand up, and that would be US Agent. Now, this is really more of like, okay, it's US Agent. The whole entire event, really the main storyline, has been about him trying to be this hero, trying to prove something, to prove that he can handle a situation like this. And technically, it does kind of show he can, but it's also him not giving up because he wants to bring down Ronan the Accuser. He wants to free America, free the world. And so it's him like just fighting against Ronan, even though for Ronan, is on a completely different level. But with them trying over and over, not giving up, it allows enough time to pass to allow Quasar the ability to absorb Ego. And so with that happening, Ronan's now weak. And so you have our heroes being able to bring down Ronan. Now for Quasar, he has to leave and stay away from Earth once again. So hopefully our heroes can find a way to get Ego out of his body and allow Quasar the ability to come back home again. So this kind of leads into an ending where we do see Charles Xavier now going to stay with the X-Men on Earth. So now he's officially back on Earth to most likely be back with the X-Men teams. And we're getting closer and closer to the idea of covering Extreme and New X-Men. But also you have Steve Rogers want to give, congrats over to US Agent. Now for US Agent, he does not want the congrats at all. And the reason why, because he believes they did a bad job being heroes. Because if they were being more like him, none of this would happen. That's his thought process. So he kind of walks away angry. But then in private, he does protect them when you have someone else talk bad about the Avengers. But the book does end on that note right there. And guys, that's the entire event of Maximum Security. So with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.